Right. So good evening. So we will continue with what we left yesterday. Just because some have come here with some misconception, and just to put things into perspective, this is the book that we are studying. Okay. தெரியணுன்றதுக்காக some have come with the idea that economic survey will be some 40-50 pages, isn't it? என்னப்பா இவ்வளோ நேரம் ஆகுது அப்படின்ற மாதிரி உட்காந்துருக்காங்க. Understand that it is, of course, a voluminous book. So we are just sifting through the pages. இது தேவையோ அது மட்டும்தான் நம்ம அனலைஸ் பண்றோம். Okay, right. So yesterday we were discussing the chapter about fiscal policies, and in that fiscal policy we dealt with questions about how the government's profile is, debt profile is, what happened to the overall debt of the government in recent years, and whether this increase in debt of the government is of course to be translated into debt unsustainability or not. So as long as the debt levels, or the concept that was introduced was what? We need not worry about debt sustainability as long as growth interest rate differential is positive. So we are poised to have a higher growth, and that's why we need not be worried about debt sustainability. That was one of the most important takeaway of that discussion. And second, we discussed about the nature of the central government's debt, general debt, that it is not exposed to external debt, it is having very low currency risk, is having low exchange rate risk, all of this. And when it comes to the state governments, we discussed as to how in the spirit of cooperative federalism, how the government, or fiscal federalism, how the central government has been transferring as per the recommendations of the Finance Commission. Right. So on their own also, the revenue of both the center as well as the states have showed up in the last year, which obviously points to one, recovery in terms of economic recovery, and also tax buoyancy. And we also dealt with a crucial question which was missing, especially after the implementation of the GST. That was whether the implementation of GST has led to the loss of revenue or whether it has been positive. So through statistics, we're not having a critical view here. Through statistics, it shows that pre-GST and post-GST, both for the center, the buoyancy has been there, and also for the state governments. The taxes subsumed under GST, pre-GST, have shown below 1 tax buoyancy, but now they are showing a higher than 1 tax buoyancy. Okay, so this is one of the main discussions or inferences that we could make from fiscal policy. Right, so in this line, we are now going to expand it to the budget, a brief discussion about the budget. Usually, we will always have, we need not go so much into the details of the budget as to what sector the government is allocated, how much. No need. Usually for prelims, you can hardly expect questions with relation to the basics of budgeting. They may ask about the statistics of deficits. They may ask about what a deficit is, what is a primary deficit, what is the ratios of the government. Only that you can expect. But now we are, of course, in a position where we need to know at least what the government is doing for this year, so that you can incorporate this in your mains, or maybe there are chances that a particular scheme that has come could be up there in your prelims also. Right. So looking at the budget, we'll just go through the important budget parameters and then go into the discussions of the budget. So what did the budget say? What it want to convey? So looking at this, revenue receipts, always we would say whenever we speak about the budget, we need to look into revenue account and capital account. Okay. So in the revenue account, what are the main sources of the government? Taxes, isn't it? So what are the expenditures, revenue expenditures of the government? What is the biggest revenue expenditure of the government? Interest payments. Okay, so interest. So after interest, there could be the central government share that is to be devolved to the states, and all of these are something which the government has to give. So these are revenue expenditures. So revenue receipts will be there, revenue expenditure will be there. The gap between revenue expenditures and revenue receipts are called as revenue deficit. So always we usually run into a revenue deficit. That has been the case since long. Okay, since 1951, And I think in one of the question I had put, isn't it, the first ever budget to put in India, that was the only instance we had a revenue surplus. So beyond that, always we are having a revenue deficit in India. Okay, so revenue deficit is there. In order to meet the deficit, we would be borrowing from, we will be borrowing. Okay, so whenever we borrow more, it will be showing in the part of capital receipts. So within capital receipts, you will have borrowings and liabilities. So the thing was, prior to 1990s, the the way in which the government was disclosing it was, on the revenue side, it was looking at the total balance. So total revenue deficit they will be looking. Take this case. Now they will balance it against the capital account. So in capital account, they will say this much receipts we have received, this much we are going to spend, and therefore there is a gap. Again, they will say that this is a gap. Capital account also they will be showing the gap. Sometimes in capital account there will not be a gap. Usually it will turn out to be positive. The balance on the capital account will be positive because the receipts are usually higher. Why is the receipt usually higher? Because we are borrowing. And therefore, when we were showing this and balancing this out, this versus this is called as the total, isn't it? The total of the expenditure minus the total of the receipts. This concept is what we call as budget deficit. Budget deficit, in fact, cloaks or hides the true liabilities of the government. That is why post 1990s, in order to go for fiscal discipline and more transparency, we had dispensed with this idea of budget deficit. So budget deficit, we do not take total receipt. The concept of total receipt itself is a misnomer, isn't it? So we have done away with it, and in respect of that, what we are doing is we take the total expenditure minus, we take all the other receipts except for borrowings and liabilities. This concept is what we call as fiscal deficit. And apart from other that, we have concepts like primary deficit. Primary deficit is to understand the responsibility of that particular government, because every year there is a huge amount of interest that we need to pay. Therefore, remove the interest component, and beyond that, whatever you have borrowed as fiscal deficit is the primary responsibility of the government in power, isn't it? That's why we have something called as primary deficit, which is nothing but fiscal deficit minus interest payments. Then we have after this FRBM Act in 2011, there was an amendment which gave that we should also be including something called as effective revenue deficit. These are the primary numbers that you would all be aware of. So let us look into all these in this year. So revenue receipts, I think yesterday in the discussion, we saw that conservative estimation by the government in terms of its budget making has given some extra room or buffer. That's seen here also. See, last year in the budget estimate, the government estimated that we will only be receiving 22 lakh crore as revenue receipts. But how much did we receive? 23 lakh crores. So when the receipts are higher than anticipated, there are chances of what decreasing? Deficit decreasing and sticking to the targets of the deficit. But what happened is, even though this increased, the thing is that what is capital? Look at the borrowings. We anticipated a borrowing of 16 lakh crores, but how much did we borrow? 17 lakh crores. Why this has increased is because commensurate with this increase in tax receipts, we also had a increase in expenditure. So we anticipated that the expenditure will only be 39 lakh crore, but the expenditure shot out to 41. This is mainly because I think you recently, yesterday also we discussed, isn't it, about the supplementary grant given by the government, which was not shown in the budget, but later we have to show it. Okay, so this is the estimate. So higher than expected expenditure has offset the gains that we received through higher receipts. So this we can see in this particular chart. So if you look at this, every year on year, the amount seems to be increasing. So this year, the budgeted capital receipt or the amount that we are going to borrow is kept at 17 lakh crore. The overall receipts is 45 lakh crores. Overall receipt. But do you think we should be looking at this number? No, we should not be looking at this number. Okay. Usually we will only be looking at this number because this is what translates into exactly what? Fiscal deficit. The borrowings will exactly be the fiscal deficit here. So fiscal deficit target, going by the slide path of the government, in 2019 20, it was 9.5 fiscal deficit. Now we have, next year we reduced it to 7. Next year we reduced it to 6.7. Last year we have 6.4. And the government says that we are on target despite the increase, visible increase, because of the lower than expected or anticipated GDP figures. Last year, every year when you put a budget, we will be saying that next year the nominal GDP of India will be like this. On that only we will say that this much is a percentage. So the government is saying that this year we are expecting the GDP to be like this. So this will usually turn out to be 6.4. There's not going to be any slide or deviation in that. Okay, right. So primary deficit also has weakened over the year, and next year it is 2.3. Okay, so revenue deficit, everything is coming down. Since last year, the budget is also introducing something called as effective capital expenditure. So effective capital expenditure is nothing but 12 plus 13. What is 12 here? Grant. So grant for creation of capital asset. So 12 is capital account expenditure. Usually on capital account, how much we are going to spend this year, for the first time historically, we have put a target of 10 lakh crores. This is a very, very huge number, a huge jump from even what was in the last year. From 7 lakh crore, the central government's part alone we are speaking of. Isn't it here? But if you look at the grant that we are giving for capital creation, 13 lakh crores. So that is what we saw in the yesterday's argument also, that capital expenditure has been given more and more focus, especially after 2014. And therefore, as a percentage of the total expenditure and GDP also, capital expenditure has been increasing. Right. So the stats and figure also show that. Right. So how much we are going to receive, what is, so this is the expenditure profile. So in the, receipt profile. So in the receipt profile, the highest again this year is going to come from borrowings. So 34 paise out of 1 rupee we are resorting from borrowings. So remaining corporation tax and income tax will be 30 paise, customs, union and GST. All together take this will be how much? 24, 28, isn't it? So 28. So nearly, which means within the taxes, if we see, now again, which has increased? Direct taxes have increased, and slowly we need to reduce, widen this gap. It has to become 33 paise, and this has to become 24 paise. That's how we need to go on the more progressive side. Okay. So again, on the expenditure as well, the highest expenditure in crude terms will be again what? Interest payment. Then comes the share of central government's share of taxes. Then comes the central sector scheme, central sponsored scheme. See, this increasing central sector scheme, this leads to a crucial question of let's say cooperative federalism is first of all challenged. But in terms of fiscal federalism, this is a little bit healthy for the states. Because the thing is, when you put more and more central sponsored scheme, the burden is going to be on the state. Because state has to share if it is a central sponsored scheme. Central sector scheme means fully financed by central. Therefore, earlier and all in the previous reports and all we had the recommendation that rather than resorting more to central sponsored, we need to go give importance to central sector. The debt burden should be taken. But the thing is, once you go for a central sector scheme, the complete autonomy is with the center. And center will now be implementing the schemes. Sometimes there are issues of non-cooperation. The scheme is not implemented properly. These kind of issues are also there. Okay. So defense, how much we have spent? More than subsidies we are spending for what? Defense. This is not only for this year. Every year this is a case. Okay. So trends in the tax receipts. What is the tax to GDP of India? This is a very important stats that you need to know. What is the tax to GDP of India? 11.1 percentage this year. During COVID, how much it was? 9.8 percentage. So this has been one of the problems of India, that we are not able to increase the tax to GDP ratio. So when you argue like this in your mains or in anywhere, you need to know what the stats is. At least put a number around 11%. Even if you don't know 11.1, 11.2, say that it is around 11%. Compare it to the OECD countries. The average of the OECD countries is 21%. Okay, so 10% extra one nammaloda vaangran. Therefore, these are all some long pending issues. So this year also, we have just sustained the same levels. Right, so this is the chart that you need to be looking at, the capital expenditure of the government. Okay, so earlier only 2.5% the government used to spend, 1.3 by the states, grants was given, 3.8 lakh crore, this is not percentage, lakh crores only was spent in 2015-16. You can see the steady hike, isn't it? So this shows the repeated commitment towards capital expenditure. Right. So let's go into the budget. Every year since the last few years, the budget has been a speech which is a thematic representation of what the government has planned. Rather than just saying about in these areas we have allotted like this, they are giving out a thematic representation as to what are the focus areas, and within that focus areas, what are the implementations they are likely to give. No need to read each and every point of the budget, because this is all tentative. We do not know. There are many schemes, many ambitions of the government which is not translated into realities. Understand? இதெல்லாம் என்ன சொல்லுவோம், we are going to do that, we are going to do this, we are going to make a new institution. 4 years later only they will be bringing that institution. Okay, so no need to go. Once it becomes a reality, then you can. But some major proposals, if at all it is new, only that I have highlighted here. I'll also be preparing this particular chapter, which means I'll go with the flow of the government so that you remember the theme in which they have arranged the budget proposals. So on the basis, I'll be giving a document also, usually in the monthly magazine. At that time also you can see, or you can just refer, just visit the PIB, go into highlights of union budget. It will hardly be 2 pages. That's it, that's enough. No need to go beyond that. Of course, people will be asking you to read about what changed in the income tax, what changed in the personal tax. Nothing is needed. Okay, just look at the slabs. We'll also explain that. So this is the first budget in the Amrit Kal. So since last year, we are in the Amrit Kal period. Amrit Kal period is the period between 75 years to 100 years. The next 25 years has been named as Amrit Kal. And also the Sanskrit names given by this government in both its speeches, in its budget and all, you also try to use it. Okay, don't be a little bit inhibitive. Do I never think a little bit reserved that when I use it, it doesn't fit me. Okay, you have to write. Right. So every year, budget gives us new terms, isn't it? So since last year, they have been using the term Jan Vagirdari. Whether you know the meaning or not, write it. Okay. Now, see, so Talinomics, these are all economic terms. Okay, these are economic concepts that are given by, that is different. These are all terms. There could be an English equivalent for this. But beyond that, we are using what? These kind of words. So let's say inclusive development, inclusive and cooperative development. We will not use that word. What we will use? Sabka saath, sabka prayas. Okay, like that we'll use. Also try to some terms which is often repeated, you can use in your whatever you want to present, you can use. Right, so 4 opportunities in this Amrit Kal. It speaks about 1, economic empowerment of women, especially through the scaling up of self-help groups. We'll also be looking at this self-help groups. At that time, I'll explain a little bit more. But these are opportunities. This year, the government has identified 4 opportunities for realizing our Amrit Kal dream. One is scaling up of self-help groups, that is making them. Today, we are operating at a very minor scale. In villages, only they'll be operating. The scale of operation is very less. Why not bring them on par with some micro units? Why not bring them into full-fledged manufacturing units or service providing units, and then slowly translate them into startups? Why not bring about this idea? So this is one of the key factors which will be given importance. PM Vikas. PM Vikas is a scheme which is meant for integration of the traditional artisans. So Vishwakarmas, craftsmen, they have to be brought under the MSME value chain. So these 2 are core important factors that will be given importance. Then tourism and green growth. Green growth speaks about all the things, or green economy. So these are the 4 opportunities that we can have. Then the theme of this year, the theme of presentation of the budget this year centers around Saptarishi, the 7 priorities of the government. So what are the 7 priorities? Inclusive development. I'll just give you this, go through it, because you all know how to read English. I'll not go to read it. Okay. Now, within all of this, what are the new schemes that the government has announced? Only that we will discuss. So one, under inclusive development, the government again increases the agriculture credit target to 20 lakh crore from 16 lakh crores. So last year it was 16 lakh crore. Now the target for agriculture growth has been enhanced all the way up to 20 lakh crores. Second, for agriculture, the government says that it will be trying to create a digital public infrastructure for agriculture. Just as we have key physical digital infrastructures across India, there are many digital infrastructures being built up. Likewise, complete agri-based infrastructure, digital infrastructure we have to create, which will be open-ended, which will be open sourced, and everybody can contribute to that. ENAM is a part of the digital infrastructure. Likewise, let's say about ONDC we said, isn't it? That's only one part of agriculture, that is marketing alone. About fertilizers, about input, about how they process their foods. All of these are not integrated together. And therefore, this is just an idea. The government is saying that we'll bring it up this year and will establish something. Atmanirbhar Bharat Horticulture Clean Plant Program. This is something new. Clean plant, nurseries, they will be incentivized to give quality seeds, which will be certified for horticulture purpose and other purposes, for which the government is going to give certain incentive. So that is a particular scheme. So these are all related to agriculture. So inclusive development always centers around agriculture, employment, all of these. So some schemes only we have spoken of. 2, global hub for millets. India will be projected as a global hub for millets, and they are saying that it will be Sri Anna. Millet in solittu polanla? No. Some years ago, rather than using of millets, we will use the word nutri-cereals, they said. Now, instead of the word nutri-cereals, we are going to use Sri Anna. Next year, Sri Anni, whatever. Okay. So, sickle cell anemia elimination mission. Every year, we used to bring certain missions related to health. This year, sickle cell anemia elimination mission, the government has contributed a certain amount. No need to know what amount the government has contributed. So second, reaching the last mile. So under this, the aspirational districts program and the block program, we'll discuss a little bit more on that in the survey also. This program has been given higher priority here. So aspirational district program, isn't it? Some 117 districts that are, say, very low, which are having a very low development status will be chosen and will be made as model districts. So Pradhan Mantri PVTG Development Mission. This is meant for tribes. Okay, so particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So for that also there is a mission for which the government has put some budget allocation. Again, newly, Bharat Shri அப்படின்ற ஒரு program they have launched. What is this Bharat Shri அப்படின்னா shared repository of inscriptions, under which all the inscriptions, the manuscripts and all will be done and it will be stored, it seems. Okay, for this a particular scheme has been come, digitization of all the ancient inscriptions. For this also they have done. So infrastructure investments, as we saw, the overall capital investment itself has increased to 13.7 lakh crore, in which it has said that it will create a new urban infrastructure development fund. See, no need to go into the details. They will only be saying that 6,000 crores will be utilized for urban infrastructure development fund. How that fund will be, how it will be incorporated, who will be the owner of that fund, these details you will not get to know now. Only later you will get to know. So just know what are the proposals, so that if you read in the newspapers, you can connect later stages. Making the cities ready for municipal bonds. What is municipal bond?
Metropolitan area where the corporation tend to give these kind of bonds.
Yes, of course. Just as we have the government securities, treasury bills and all issued by the central government and state governments, we also have something called as municipal bonds, which the municipal corporations can float in order to borrow money and then utilize it for developmental purposes. We have been commencing this operation since long. Since 2000 onwards, we have commenced. But many of the municipal corporations, they are not coming forward because they don't have adequate resources to pay back. Isn't it? We are talking about problems, financial problems for this entire state. What about the municipal corporations? Sometimes there is so much of strict norms also. The RBA and the SEBI, they have all brought out. Sorry, SEBI is not involved, only RBA. So RBA has brought very strict regulations in terms of floating this. Okay, so this and all will be relaxed and will be trying to push more for municipal bonds. How they are going to do this, we don't know. Yeah. See, public infrastructure, digital public infrastructure is something. It's an open. It will be an open-ended, where all stakeholders involved in agriculture, be it animal husbandry, be it those who are providing the industries who are involved in agriculture allied sectors, they all will come together, share their information, and all sectors. Let's say an insurance company which is giving agriculture insurance needs certain information about soil criteria and all. So all those who are involved in agriculture will pool their resources and put it into a data. Okay, so that data, how it is going to be, whether it is going to be given a new name, we do not know. The government has said that from now the work will begin, where a new public digital infrastructure will be created solely for the purpose of agriculture. Okay. So now unleashing the potential. Yesterday we were discussing about how trust-based governance is important for investor confidence, isn't it? So on that level, in order to increase the governance, the government has decided to bring out the Jan Vishwas bill. Already it is put, isn't it? Has anybody come across this? Jan Vishwas bill, December draft vandirchu nenikren. Even I have not gone through it. I think in December or maybe in this January something. Nearly only I was seeing about this in the news. So whatever. So this Jan Vishwas bill, to create a confidence among people and investors, it will try to decriminalize and amend most of the laws which are standing as a hindrance towards business. So it points out how 42 central acts will be amended under this. 39,000 compliances till now have been reduced. 3,400 legal provisions have been decriminalized. Yesterday we were talking about how the Companies Act, many of the provisions were decriminalized recently. Okay, so this will bring about governance reform. The Center for Excellence for Artificial Intelligence. This is a new age phenomenon. So for that also, Niti Aayog will be spearing head all of this. Entity DigiLocker. We all know about DigiLocker, which is meant for individuals. You can store all your databases. Entity DigiLocker, what is meant to be? This will be the official digital locker provided by the government, where entities, for example, firms, MSMEs, they can put their data. Let's say they want to store their tax data, tax forms. They can store in it. No need to. What is the main purpose of DigiLocker now? For individuals, what is the biggest gain of DigiLocker? Hmm? Yes. So one, it stores your document. No need to have physical evidences. All of this is cutting down, isn't it? So it makes your whatever service you want, it makes it hassle free. You can link for government purpose. It can source from DigiLocker itself, isn't it? So likewise, entity DigiLocker will also be established this year. Now more and more focus will be given to lab grown diamonds. Lab grown diamonds, synthetic diamonds will be given more importance to cut down our import dependency. Right. So how that will be, for example, both production within India, lab grown diamonds we can produce. Second, if we are importing diamonds, real diamonds, we will be incentivized to produce import what? Lab grown diamonds. And therefore, the duties on the lab grown diamonds, the customs and all will be reduced. That is also budget proposal. Now, pardon? No need. So Kimberley certification is only for diamonds, only for diamond certification. That will not be here. Okay. We do not know what is the standards that is being now, because this is a nascent development. Slowly, people are, of course, getting used to this. Rather than real diamonds, they are giving importance to lab-grown diamonds because you cannot distinguish, it seems. There is no change at all. நீங்க என்னதான் பார்த்தாலும் என்ன பண்ண முடியாது. Only when you test it in the laboratories you can know. No. Lab grown diamonds, it could be for other material use also, for ornamental use also. Okay, right. So green growth. PM Pranam. Scheme. Okay. So here, restoration, awareness, and amelioration of Mother Earth. Okay, for Mother Earth we brought. So we have to cut down fertilizer use and all. So that's the main thing. So 500 new waste to wealth plant will be created in the Govardhan program. Govardhan galvanizing. Some other one project. Galvanizing organic agro based some resource, something like that. Okay, this is a scheme, earlier scheme. So under this scheme, the village communities, they will be given incentives to make use of the waste, bio waste or biomass into something productive. Okay, so that's it. So under this waste to wealth projects will be given Bharatiya Prakritik Kheti Bio Input Resource Center for millets. Okay, for millets, the new center has been announced. Mishti program for mangrove. Okay, so these are some things. Don't be worried about how this will be. How this will pan out, we'll only wait and see. So under youth power, Amrit Piti. Piti na another. Piti means seed, isn't it? Seed? Generation. Okay. So generation. So how this new generation is going to be, we are focusing on Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0. Then you could ask, where is 3.0? No 3.0. Directly you are going to 4.0. This doesn't mean that it is a generation of reform. This speaks about the Industrial Revolution 4.0. Right, where skill will be now provided for artificial intelligence, for 5G, new kind of eras that is associated with 4.0, that will be given importance under the skill development mission. So new age courses and all will be done. Then Unity Mall. Unity Mall. Didn't you go through the newspapers? Unity Mall will be created in every capital of the state. This Unity Mall will be a shopping complex where priority will be given to the one district, one product. So in all Tamil Nadu, if there are one district, one products, all of this will be sourced and will be put together in this Unity Mall. Already one district, one product in எல்லா ரயில்வே ஸ்டேஷன் வச்சிருப்பாங்க, ஒருத்தனும் வாங்க மாட்டான். How many of you have purchased? நீங்க வாங்கிருக்கீங்களா? Very good. In the entire class, only one. Okay. So whatever, but this is just a case. This is on the model of the Ekta Mall that has been established in the Statue of Unity, Gujarat. Okay, there where you will have handicrafts, all this traditional arts and crafts and all will be there. So on the basis only we have put this. Right. So coming to the financial part, one, the government is now revamping the credit guarantee trust for small and micro enterprises. This is a particular trust which gives credit guarantee to MSME loans. Understand, emergency credit line guarantee scheme is different. For that we have this NTSME or guarantee trust irukanga, avanga vera. This is for normal purpose. If normally an MSME is taking a loan, that will be guaranteed by this particular fund. This fund, the corpus of this fund will be increased to give more support to MSME loans. So that has been there. So it will be revamped. It will also include more and more sections, and 2 lakh more will be provided because of this infusion. Around 6,000 crores, or I think like that, 6,000 crore will be put under this fund, due to which it will be able to guarantee 2 lakh more such loans. And the rate of the loans, especially in recent times, have been increasing, and therefore it will also try to subvent or reduce the loans by 1%. So this is one of the thing. Regarding this gift city, there are certain things that has been proposed by the budget, that the powers of the SEZ Act, the Special Economic Zones Act, will act as an export unit. Similarly, also the IFSC has been given its own provisions, but all the acts, all the empowerments of the SEZ will now be delegated to the IFSC. Right, no separate overlap of these functions. Second, single window for registration. Already IFSC has subsumed the role of the RBI, of the SEBI, everything. For example, if you need to have financial, then RBI will be there. Capital market, then SEBI. That is for India. But in IFSC, Gift City, the IFSC authority only will have the powers to give all kinds of clearances. Okay, so that will be strengthened. Second, a Mahila Samman Bachat Patra. This is a savings scheme that is meant for women or girls. This will be a deposit facility up to a maximum of 2 lakh, and it will be provided for 2 years. 2 lakh you can deposit for 2 years, and the interest that you will get is 7.5%. இல்லையே 2 lakh தான் நினைக்கிறேன். I think please cross check. I don't know. I read 2 lakhs. Okay. So 2 lakhs only. ஏன்னா 12 lakhs எல்லாம் கொடுத்தா ஆல்ரெடி இருக்கவங்க எல்லாம் என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க, நம்ம வீட்லயே என்ன பண்ணிடுவாங்க, எல்லாம் எடு, பேங்க்ல இருந்துலாம் எடு, எல்லாத்தையும் எடு. So already interest rates are increasing. So now at this time, even banks themselves will be offering 7%. Isn't it? But 2 years deposit persa கொடுக்க மாட்டாங்க, fixed deposit. But this is going to be a good source of finance. So for state again, since as in the last year, the special plan, a special assistance plan for states, again this year also interest free loans will be given, 50-year interest free loans for capital expenditure purposes. And also the states for this year also, last year also it was 3.5% was increased. Up to that it can borrow. This year again 3.5. So we will normalize maybe only in the next year. So tax reforms, coming to important part, tax reforms. So exemptions of customs, duties, this all indirect tax reforms. No need to read about what will become costly, what will become cheaper. என்ன கொடுத்தாலும் நம்மளுக்கு தேவையானதை நம்ம வாங்குவோம், isn't it? So no need to go into that. No need to go into what has which customs has come. No new announcement. For example, last year the government came out with the increase, a new concept called as the Agri Infrastructure Development Cess. Like that, they have not brought anything new here. So no need to read all of this. Just the basic customs duty of certain products. For example, lab grown diamonds that have been cut down. For green mobility, for other part of things, for example, for green mobility, the government is reduced all the taxes. For compressed natural gases, the duties have been reduced. Likewise, import of capital goods, machinery for lithium ion manufacturing, that has been reduced just to incentivize imports. Okay. Now, coming to this, enhanced limits for micro enterprises and certain professionals in cash. And what does it mean? இது என்ன அப்படின்னு சொன்னா, presumptive taxation. Presumptive taxation. The presumptive taxation limits have been enhanced for micro enterprises and certain professionals. When you had gone through the budget papers, you could have heard about this, isn't it? Professionals kana tax you, some units kana tax has been changed. What is the change? What is presumptive taxation? First of all, usually all the taxes that we pay is on the basis of the income that we have generated, isn't it? Only after the outcome you will be paying taxes. Let's say you have had an income of 10 lakhs, then you will be paying taxes accordingly. For select companies or firms which do not have the ability for having a elaborate bookkeeping mechanism, right? There are certain professionals, let's say professionals like, let's say people are running a salon, or people are having some other professionals or engineering professional, whatever it is. If they are not in a position to have their own book system, then they do not know what is the amount of revenue that they generated, what is the expenditure, what kind of exceptions they can have. All this they cannot maintain, they cannot audit properly, isn't it? For those kind of people, and for individuals as well as for firms, the government in the income tax itself has a concept called as presumptive taxation. Presumptive taxation means they are allowed to pay taxes on the basis of what they estimate to have, not on the basis of what they actually have. What this will be, for example, this will be till now 8%, 8% for certain amount of money which is cash basis. Cash basis. In whatever cash revenue you have generated, you need to pay 8% to the government, and 6% if you have received it digitally. Okay, let's say a particular company is having 10 lakh rupees as revenue in that year, out of which 3 lakh is cash receipts. For 7 lakh, they will be paying how much? 6%. And for the remaining 3 lakh, they will be paying 8%, and that will be the tax that they pay to the government. But understand, this seems to be very low, isn't it? 6%, 8% tax is very low. But this is not on the basis of taxable income. This is on the basis of revenue generated. I may have a revenue of 1 crore, but my expenditure will be 2 crores. I need to pay how much? Out of that 1 crore, I need to pay like this. So presumptive taxation is there, but this is how it happens. What has been done in this particular budget is that they have increased the limits of those who will be able to do this presumptive taxation. For example, earlier, people earning up to professionals, people earning a revenue of up to 50 lakh were able to do this. Now, people earning up to 75 lakh will also can resort to what? Presumptive taxation. The same is for business taxpayers also. Earlier it was 2 crore revenue, now it is 3 crore revenue. But this is just an option, it is not a compulsion. They can go by the ordinary system by paying taxes on their profits rather than their revenue. Clear? So this is the change. Second, new cooperatives. New cooperatives that are set up after this year will be only required to pay 15% taxes. So this is one important criteria. Second, startup tax exemption will be extended further to 1 year. So what is this startup tax exemption? Every year since this startup India, we have been saying that all the startups that are established in 2014 need not pay tax. Second, next year, since this is a huge success, we have increased it in 2015 budget. We said for another year also, startups incorporated within this period no need to pay tax. This ritual has been going on. Again, this year, what has happened? We have extended this, which means in this year also, if you are incorporating a startup, as long as it is a startup for the next 5 years, no need to pay taxes. Agniveer Fund will be provided the triple E status. What is this triple E status? BE triple E படிச்சீங்களா அங்க யாராவது? Right. Exempt status. That is called as exempt triple E. அப்படின்னா என்ன அப்படின்னு சொன்னா exempt at the point of deposit, exempt at the point of withdrawal, exempt when you get capital gains.
TPF also the same.
Yes. Right. So what was the problem is Agniveer Fund means this is a fund where our soldiers, the military personnel will be holding some amount. It's like they are just as we have NPS, they have started up this particular fund. They will be subscribing to this fund. So when they withdraw from this fund, it will be exempt. So that was in the proposal. And finally, coming to the most important change, that was in the personal income tax slab. See, of course, you would have heard about till 5 lakhs they were paying, now 7 lakh exemptions. Understand there is two words that you need to be very clear here. The usage has been rebate and not exemption. What is exemption? People earning up to 7 lakh are exempted ன்னு சொன்னா அது வேற. Right? People earning up to 7 lakh will be rebated. So what does it mean? It does not mean that in the earlier, let's say, up to 2 points. See, before going into this new tax, I just want to emphasize on the tax that was before 2019. This was the tax before 2019, and this was the tax after 2020. And look at this, you will get to know that prior to this, we had 4 slabs. 1, 0 to 2.5 lakh, no tax. 2.5 to 5 lakhs, 5% you need to pay. Beyond 5 to 10, 20%. Beyond 10, you need to pay 30%. It's a very simple tax structure in which in 2019 itself, we extended the rebate to 5 lakh. So people earning up to 5 lakh will be given the rebate. So what does it mean? If you are earning 6 lakhs, then you need to pay how much? Up to 2.5 lakh, no rupee. Beyond that, how much you have? 2.5 lakh you have. 5% of that will be 12,500, isn't it? Right. Beyond 5 lakh, how much you have? 1 lakh. So for 1 lakh, you need to pay 20,000. So how much it is? 1 lakh 20% na 20,000, isn't it? So 32,500 you need to pay to the government if you are earning 6 lakh. If you are earning 5 lakh, how much you need to pay? Only 12,500, isn't it? If you are paying 12,500, you have to first pay, and then the government will look into all those who have paid below 12,500 and will rebate to them. All those who have paid below 12,500 means that they have only received amounts up to 5 lakhs, isn't it? The government will take all the tax accounts and will look at all these numbers and will send the money back. That is called as rebate. What about the person earning 6 lakhs, sir? Nothing will be given. Okay, so it is only up to that. The same thing, the slab alone was changed. The same thing continues. Till 5 lakh, there is a rebate. But how you calculate the taxes was changed in 2020. How? Up to 2.0, here 5. Beyond that, it is 20 and 30, isn't it? We changed that. We brought in a 10%, then we brought a 15%, 20%, 25%, 30%. And we said, we give you two options, you choose whatever you want. Okay. Many of them choose this because of the sheer complexity. Because when you see both, sometimes you can do accounting on these and you can find that this is far more better than this, and accordingly you can pay. Right? On paper, it seems that this is better, isn't it? But there are many conditions here. That we have, what we have done here, we have extended this to the next year, saying that the new tax slabs will be revised, and this new tax slabs, the rebate facility will now be provided for people who are earning up to 7 lakhs. So this is what is the new structure, under which 3 lakhs are exempted. Understand, up to 3 lakh people need not pay. Beyond 3 lakh to 6 lakh, they need to pay 5%, 6 to 9, 10%, 15, 20, 30. So this is similar to the previous old regime. The same thing has carried forward, just a change in the tax slab rates. Right. So beyond 15 lakh only need to pay 30,000. So let's say this is okay. And 7 lakh means, it does not mean, let's say you are earning 8 lakh. Will you be given rebate? No. No rebate for you. You need to pay all tax. 7.2 lakh you have earned. No rebate. Okay. 6.9 lakh you have earned. Whatever you pay to the government will pay you back. Okay. You need to pay for receiving it, or else the government will fine you. Okay. So that is the case. Now, the devil is in the detail. Look at the word that the government has used. The new tax will be the default tax from this year. For example, now you are a new taxpayer. You go into the tax department, you fill up the form. It will be calculating your taxes on the basis of new tax, because that's the default mode. But you can change the default mode to old mode. Why do they retain the old mode? That is the main question. If the new thing, as the government has claimed, is going to give enormous benefit, why do they give the option of opting for the old? See, அதான் சொல்றேன், இந்த this slab. Why? அப்படின்னா, because if at all we are going to compel all of them to come under this, there is going to be some disappointments for some sections. So who are these sections அப்படின்னு சொன்னா, the thing is, this will not just be a saver. Understand, in the older regime, we could claim standard deduction of 50,000. 50,000 you can claim. For example, you had 8 lakh as your total income. You will minus 50,000 standard deduction. You can do that. Second, if you had purchased any home and if you are paying EMI for that home, up to 2 lakh you can minus. So 7.5 you can bring it down to 5.5. Okay. Now again, there are sections within the IT Act, 80C, 80D. There are many exemptions there. For example, ELSS, Equity Linked Savings Scheme, is a mutual fund. If you have put in that mutual fund, whatever amount you have put, you can claim up to 1.5 lakhs. Let's say from 5.5 lakh, you have claimed this. What is your salary now? Now for this 4.4 you will pay, and the government will give you rebate. But under this new system, you cannot claim all these exemptions. Okay. So whom will this particular change benefit? Those who don't have the savings habit at all. Those who don't have anything to claim, anything to reduce, they will benefit if they have this. Okay. So accordingly, the number might change, but it is up to you to decide what is better. So the government is giving you the option to do this. Just because they've increased it to 7 lakh, it doesn't mean that people will immediately get benefit. Okay, so that is the important change. So with this, we will conclude our budget session and go into the fourth chapter, that is monetary management and financial intermediation. So it has been a very good year. Any doubts regarding the budget? You understand this personal income tax, isn't it? Right.
So what are the main reasons behind the tax to be very low?
See, the thing is that the biggest culprit is the tax base in India is very less. The tax base, especially, should come from the direct tax. Let's say, till last year when we were discussing, we were saying that the 5 lakh is the threshold below which, beyond which you need to pay. A person earning 5 lakh and above need to pay tax. How many are paying tax? How does the government know that people are earning 5 beyond 5? Salaried people, the government will know because we have digital tools. What about people doing business? Do you really think that a person having a shop, tea shop in Anna Nagar will not earn 5 lakh a year? Do you think that he is paying tax? No. So the willingness to pay tax, the tax compliance burden, tax administration, the tax rates, and overall culture of India is one of the reasons. So beyond that, you can find the problems associated with the government, associated with the tax rates, associated with the compliance burden also. You just give to a person and say, the government is demanding from you, but you need to undergo the unnecessary hassle of filling all the forms. உங்கள்ட்ட இருந்து காசு வாங்குறாங்க, ஆனா நீங்க 10 ஃபார்ம் ஃபில் பண்ணி இந்தாங்க அப்படின்னு கொடுக்கணும். ரைட், இதெல்லாம் எதுக்குன்னு? ரைட், ஃபில் ஃபார்ம் 15, ஃபில் ஃபார்ம் 45, ஃபில் ஃபார்ம் 56னா ஃபார்மே வேண்டாம். That's what is happening. So tax base itself is very less, and the government is also not stretching up its fiscal resources by increasing the tax. For example, there are let's say many years ago itself there has been a recommendation that agriculture needs to be taxed, especially high income agriculture. The government will never tax it. Okay, so there are some resources, but let's not go into that. Okay, I hope you understand. Now, monetary management. So price pressure was in tandem with recovery. Of course, we all know that Europe and all higher commodity prices were there, and this synchronous monetary tightening, all of this we know, isn't it? So till now, the government, the RBI has hiked 225 basis point, and today how much it hiked? 25 basis point it hiked again today. Okay, so it's last time 35 basis point, this time again 25 basis point, but this seems to be a reduction in the hike levels, isn't it? The same is the case. That's why we were discussing yesterday, the pace of hikes has been reducing. The other thing is, so repo increase has been the story so far in this year. The next thing is about the STF introduction, the standing deposit facility. The standing deposit facility allows the RBI to absorb what? Absorb liquidity without having to pay collateral, or without having to surrender securities, it will be absorbing. Okay, so SDF replaces the reverse repo rate as a floor rate. So I always used to have repo rate, and below that reverse repo rate was there. Now the SDF has taken the position of reverse repo. But SDF is an overnight facility only. Understand? SDF is only for 1 day. But what about higher tenures? Say for 1 week. Still the reverse repo is continuing. The fixed repo rate is also there. Variable repo rate also operations are there. That is, on the basis of demand, the RBI will be saying, you can deposit whatever you want, I'll be paying you the interest. But it has to surrender what? In reverse repo rate, it has to surrender collateral and securities. But STF, no need. And this year also, an off-cycle meeting was held in May 2020. In March 2020, an off-cycle meeting was held. What does it mean by off-cycle? Off-cycle monetary policy meeting na? Not in between 6 months. Every 2 months, the monetary policy committee has to meet. So next month, let's say now is a meeting. So we are seeing that the government will now meet. The MPC will meet by February 1st week. Sorry, this is February 1st week, isn't it? March, April 1st week, they will be meeting. But if at all there is some disruption in the economy, they will meet in the month of March itself. A sudden meeting will be done. So in the month of May, they met together, which was an off cycle. At that time only, they increased the 40 basis point, which denotes that India was having a pressure from what was happening across the world. Right. So the change was, if you look at throughout the year, last year and all, the stand of the RBI was accommodative stand. Every year it was having accommodative stand. Now it has gone to accommodative and focused on the withdrawal of accommodation. Accommodative but focused on withdrawal of accommodation to support growth. These has been the words of RBI in its meetings. Okay, so there has been a shift in its attitude. So accordingly, the expansion, the M0 expanded a little bit last year, despite contraction, despite the RBI taking steps to curb the money supply, the M0 has increased, and M0 has particularly increased because of bankers' deposit with the RBI. What is M0? M0 contains money in circulation plus money in circulation contains all of that. Second, bankers deposit with RBI. Then other deposits, isn't it? This other deposit is not a big number. This is a big number. And again, bankers deposit with RBI. When will it increase? If the CRR is increased, banks will now bring the deposit to the RBI. So last year, we increased the CRR by 50 basis point, which led to the withdrawal of 86,000 crores in the economy. So 86,000 crores was put into the M0, isn't it? So M0 was increasing because of the liquidity operations of the RBI and CRR increase and all. Okay. And in terms of multiplication, even though we were trying to curb the multiplying factor, it has somewhat remained stable. In M3 and M0, between the broad money M3 and the monetary base M0, the multiplication factor in India has been consistently hovering around 5.1. Okay, so no change in money supply multiplication. Right. Liquidity conditions we just saw. And not only did it withdraw, sometimes there were situations where transient liquidity tightness was there. For example, we always say that in the period of October, because it's a festive season, no matter what the economic condition is, banks will be facing a liquidity problem in terms of demand, because everyone will be demanding to spend. So see, we are now on the tight policy, but there is a liquidity demand in the market. Whether we have to tighten or whether we have to leave it, we have to allow for more liquidity for that particular period of time. So for that, the government was resorting to open market operations. It was pushing more money. Like that, there are many operations conducted by this. Okay, and also withdrawal also led to withdrawal of the liquidity, absorption of the liquidity also led to increase in the weighted average call rates, T-bill rates and all. For example, there is so much money in the market. What will happen to the interest rates? It will decrease. When the RBI is absorbing money, what will happen to the interest rates? It will increase. Therefore, the call rate, what is call money rate? Banks charging interest on other banks, isn't it? So that rate will increase. Certificate of deposits, who will issue? Banks will issue as a bond. This, when they issue, the interest rate will increase when the money supply is less. And therefore, all of this has increased what? The interest rate on call money, on commercial papers, all of these, it has increased. So this has led to a convergence in what is happening in the market as well as in the other phases also. Transmission of this rate. The EBLR, external benchmark based lending rates, has seen a transmission of 225 basis points. It is unsurprising because EBLR is mostly based on repo. So when repo changes, automatically EBLR will change. So complete transmission is there. But all the previous loans are on the basis of MCLR. MCLR has also shown a higher than average increase, 115 basis point. Nearly, let's say if you put it, padi. So 50% transmission is there, at least in the MCLR. So this is the case. And also, there is one interesting trend that the RBI through its study finds that the lending rate, the weighted average lending rate on the fresh loan, any fresh loan, the loans were higher, the interest rate were higher in the case of public sector bank. So when people came to public sector bank, the public sector bank was charging them a higher interest, fresh loans. On the flip side, when people went to brought their deposits to public sector banks, they also need to give them deposit rates, isn't it? The increase in deposit rates of the public sector banks were low, but for private sector banks, they increased their deposit rates so as to attract more deposits. So these two has been the reverse case, that loans are given at a higher rate by public sector banks. Deposits are given a higher interest rate by private sector banks. Now, government securities. Yesterday we were speaking about the yield, isn't it? Yield, should it increase or should it decrease when we are following a tight monetary policy? Tight monetary policy, the yield should increase. When interest rates are increasing, the yield should also increase. The interest should also increase, isn't it? So that's what. So obviously, the 10-year government bond yield was increasing. You can see here. So since June 2020 onwards, the yield of, especially since 2021 onwards, you can find that the yield was increased. Okay, so no change here. And it also says that in the trading of the government securities, private sector banks became the dominant traders, both in terms of buying and selling. 25% of the government bonds are brought by private sector bank. 28% of the bonds are sold by private sector banks. Therefore, in the GSEC market, the huge amount of trading volume comes from the active interest of private sector banks. Clear? So banking system, so here we are talking about financial intermediation. First, we talked about the monetary policy, what was there. Now we are going to look into two or three major financial systems. The first is banking system. So the banking system, as yesterday as we saw, the NPA has reduced from 8.2 to 5%, which is 7-year low. This is mainly on account of the 4R approach since 2015 onwards. Recognition, resolution, recapitalization, and reforms. These are the 4R reforms brought under the mission Indradhanush. Okay, this was a banking reform way back. Okay, 2015-16 கொண்டு வந்த ஒரு reform. So அதுக்கு இந்த 4R சொல்லுவாங்க. Try to incorporate these 4R approach of the bank government has translated into greater dividend in terms of banking performance. So it seems to be paying off. The declining trend will continue, is what the report says. That it will further go from 5 to 4.5 also. Right. So other things that we need to say in terms of banking health is provision coverage ratio, PCR. What is PCR? Provision coverage ratio, Nana? Provision coverage ratio means? The liquidity coverage ratio, LCR. PCR or provision coverage ratio denotes the amount of profits that the bank provide by their own selves in order to cover the risk of NPA. NPA is increasing. To cover that NPA, if at all it is going to become NPA, and if they are going to write it off, let's say, then they cannot just write it off. They have to put it in the balance sheet, for which they will be storing up some amount. That is called as provision coverage ratio. How much they can provide for the NPS. It has been increasing year after year, and 71% it is increased. So let's say, yes, when the PCR is increasing, it means that the particular bank is well positioned to cover any risk. It is on this basis, the similar kind of theory also applies to interest coverage ratio that we see in companies. That question was asked in a previous year question about interest coverage ratio. When we have high interest coverage ratio, what does it denote? Whether it denotes a healthy functioning of a company or not. That was the question. Okay, right. CRAR, capital adequacy ratio, has been showing a very high amount of 16%. So 16% includes 9% CAR plus 2.5 of SLR. Capital adequacy will be seen in terms of 1 CAR plus what? Capital adequacy ratio 9. அதை தாண்டி வேற எதுவும் பார்க்கணும். Buffer. Okay. So capital conservation buffer 2.5%. So that. So 11.5 தானே. 11.5 is the average requirement that the bank is setting, but healthy levels have been maintained. Nearly 16% is a CAR today. And most of the banks pass the stress test of the RBI. And today there is no bank under the prompt corrective action of the RBI. Under the PCA guideline, which brings stressful banks within this particular domain, there is no bank under PCA last year. This shows that financial system, especially banking system, is safe and healthy. Right. So that we can see that because of this, this is also translating into credit growth, which is nearly double digit. The non-food, non-agriculture bank credit, especially to the industry, MSME and other sectors, including your personal loan, home loans and all this has shown how much? Double digit growth. So see the period from August 19 till December 2022, the ratios were, the growth was only 8% and below that. From last year onwards, we can find that there is a steep increase. So this is what yesterday we were saying, that it is not only due to the pent-up demand, but also to a sustained consumption demand from the segment. That's what shows this higher. This is not only seen in one sector, almost all sectors. Agriculture loans also showing a high growth period. Industry also showing a high growth period. Services again showing. Personal loans again showing. If you see, in 2015, it was so high till 2015, and from then it dropped. Why did it drop since 2015 onwards? Because of the twin balance sheet syndrome, because of certain issues. So much of NPAs were there, all of this. Now, due to reforms, again, we are increasing. That's what we discussed yesterday also, right? So retail credit is driving growth, which also, especially through housing demand. When the home loan demand has increased so much, it obviously points to the inducement of a virtuous cycle of investment, especially from the private side. Because investment cycle will be now spearheaded by the private rather than government. So this is one of the key indicators that we can find. Venture capital funding, overseas issuance of bond have all come down in recent years because the banks are able to meet the debt needs of the private sector. Earlier, there was either the bank was charging more, or the outside, the overseas, or so venture capital was seemingly an attractive way of mobilizing funds. But now more and more industries are leaning towards banking capital. Right, so this is also a trend. Accumulation of deposits earlier, especially since 2020 onwards, and earlier also, more and more deposits were taken in by the banks, which is also given if enough room to meet the demand that is increasing right now. Okay, though, so the credit cycle and the investment cycle will be sustained because of healthy balance sheets maintained by banks. About NBFC's share in the credit has been consistently increasing. 31 lakh crore was the amount of credit that it gave. Right now, earlier it was only 10 lakh crore. 3 times it has increased in the last 10 years, despite 2018-19 being a very bad year for NBFC. Okay, this also has to do with the increase of fintech companies, with the increase of new systems called as pay laters, app-based platforms, NBFCs. This is mushrooming this particular change. So asset quality and NPA also seems to be declining. The CAR of NBFCs is now at a very healthy 27.6, where the RBI recently, since last year, also brought a prompt corrective action for NBFC, under which the CAR should be minimal 15%. So way beyond what is expected, many of the NBFCs are performing. And in one of the RBI's sample survey, it found that only 8% of the NBFCs are in fact on the verge of entering into a financial stress. Right. So just look at the number tally. NBFCs gives the highest credit to industry, followed by the retail segment, followed by services segment, and finally agriculture. So this is the order of its credit exposures. IBC, right, facilitating the process of exit. We do know till now, out of 5,800 corporate insolvencies, there are 3,900 which have been closed, out of which 553 have gone through resolution plans, 1,800 by liquidation, 740, 19% by withdrawals, 8 and 21% by settlements. So liquidation enna appdin sonna, there is no plan at all. That's why it is liquidated, isn't it? One, there is no plan, or let's say beyond resolution, it seems more wise and prudent to go for liquidation. That's why we do this. 46% is liquidated right now. But now we can see that if we are going, it is not coming through a resolution but liquidation, of course we are questioning the very use of IBC. But the thing is, the value that you resolved, that you gained through liquidation, is far higher than the SARFAESI. In the SARFAESI Act also you can liquidate. But if you are liquidating through IBC, it is giving you higher rewards. That's what you can see here. Let's not go into this. Right. See here, the IBC recovers the highest amount for the scheduled commercial banks. Look at all the mechanisms. You can find that in terms of value, the IBC is the highest. So right now, if you see, 47,000 crores since 2021 to 2020, in this 1 year itself, through the IBC, we were able to resolve. Look at the year 2019-20, 1 lakh crore. Next year, obviously, there is a drop because we put a moratorium on IBC. No IBC proceedings, only existing IBCs were done. No new IBCs were brought. That is why. So this is becoming the most dominant way of resolving loans. And it has completely changed the behavior of those who do business with the banks. For example, look at here. It nudged thousands of debtors to settle their dues even before initiation. I think yesterday also we saw, isn't it? So it has changed the narrative completely. 7 lakh crore has been disposed of even before it came within CARP. Look at the number of admissions. How many have been admitted? 5,000 have been admitted. How many have been resolved even before admission? 23,000. So once there is a possibility of you getting admitted, there are business ventures who are feeling that need to resolve it. Okay, so IBC is obviously a success. In terms of the value realized also, there seems to be some sort of advantage with regards to IBC. So look at the companies here. One, resolved is 553. Here we saw, isn't it? Now, the claim. This 553 companies had to give 7 lakh crores. Understand? If they were liquidated, how much could the bank get? 1.3 lakh. But because they were resolved, how much they got? 2 lakh 43. Okay. And this is only claim of the liquidation. Do you really think that we can actually liquidate this much amount? No. That would be far, far less. Therefore, this amount itself is a huge number. Coming to this, ordered for liquidation. Look at this number. 8 lakh is the claim. The liquidation value, if it was liquidated normally, How much it is? 60%, which is only 7.3%. So this is obviously an issue, but the report finds that if we had gone through SURFACE, if we had gone through other means, even this we could not have got. அதே ரொம்ப கம்மின்றாங்க. So liquidation value in absolute terms, it seems to be very less. But however, it is of course better something than nothing. The மாதிரி some amount is being resolved here. So okay, so this I think this is enough. In capital markets, primary markets last year, you know that stock markets and all did not perform well. The IPO market was very declining last year. But one positive sign is that even though the value generated through the IPOs have fallen nearly in half, the number of firms opting for IPO have increased. 37% of more firms have now come under the IPO, which means they are trying to tap into the financial market. In the secondary market also, there has been no growth. Of course, Sensex, Nifty and all have been showing signs of decline, but comparatively, other indexes and all, if you compare, India is far better. And that is also seen in the volatility index. India's volatility index, earlier in the time of April and all, it was so volatile, but now it has become stabilized. Retail participation also grown. Now the demat account has reached 10 crore demat. Last year, mutual funds, however, have seen a very less inflow. This is mainly because of overseas investors taking out money from the mutual funds. Okay, outperformed its peer. You can see here. So finally, in this year, the number of demat account have become 10 crores. Right. So finally, it talks about the major challenge to all this monetary system, that is in the form of cryptocurrencies. Okay. So cryptocurrencies enna problem da, the problem is now emanating because of one of the largest crypto exchanges, FTX அப்படின்ற ஒரு corporation collapsed last year, and due to which there was a huge drop in value. You can see here how volatile it is. It reached all the way up to 3 trillion in January. 3 trillion வரைக்கும் கூட போச்சு. From there it dropped. Look at the crash of crypto markets. All these are leading to problems not only to the monetary stability but to the entire financial system. It again speaks about how it is posing a climate risk, how it is posing a risk to financial intermediation. The claim of the cryptocurrencies has been that it will do away with the intermediaries. But the report, the survey says that instead of doing away with the old, let's say, conventional intermediaries like banks, this crypto system has brought new intermediaries. For example, we need crypto wallets. There will be people who are issuing crypto wallets. We need to depend on that. We need to depend on crypto exchanges. So crypto exchanges, crypto issuers, banking system, some financial companies who are involved in this crypto, these are the new intermediaries. So the claim that intermediaries will not be there, financial disintermediation being the biggest goal of cryptocurrency, is actually fallacy. It is not going to happen, is one of the arguments of it. So highly volatile, and also the geographically pervasive nature of crypto ecosystem. It doesn't know what the border is, isn't it? All the money, all the capital systems, market systems, we know that here it will be different in other parts, but crypto treats the world as the same. And for this nature does not allow us to bring about any sort of ecosystem or regulation by our own. Only through global cooperation we can tackle this menace. And it has categorically said that even the US regulators, who were having a somewhat soft approach, have now claimed that all this Bitcoin, Ether and all will not be regarded as securities because they are not crypto assets at all. Right? What is security? The security is a bond. Today, an equity share is a security, which means you can sell, you can buy, whatever it is. Derivatives are securities. These are all given legal status to be traded in India. Likewise, you need not trade because this is not a security at all. That is the official position of the US. In fact, recent years, the RBI has been taking the position that RBI should ban what? Cryptocurrencies, especially private cryptocurrencies. So it talks about looking at the other companies, other countries' experience and trying to incorporate a legislation. Of course, the legislation is on the works, but how it is going to be done, we do not know. So it has listed out certain things undertaken by other countries. For example, MiCA by EU. The markets in crypto assets, MiCA, a regulation recently the EU bought. Japan amended its Payment Services Act to regulate the trading of cryptocurrencies. Switzerland brought regulations for initial coin offerings. Just as we put IPO, a new coin will be introduced, and that is called as ICO. That how it will be regulated. Ban of certain tokens undertaken by Nigeria. And despite all this anti-money laundering and countering of funding of terrorism, all these norms have been put in place by the OECD, by the FATF and all. But despite all of that, it is very, very difficult to contain the crypto transaction. It is, of course, undermining all the regulations that we have towards financial frauds. Right. So IFSC Gift City. So this underpins India's outlook towards capital account convertibility. India wants to slowly go into a capital account convertibility and to liberalize it, for which IFSC is a key part to play. So as we discussed this in this budget also, the powers of the RBI, SEBI and all have been now delegated to this IFSCA. Now it has been growing and 390 entities are now there within this gift city. It is becoming slowly a global financial hub. Several of the MOUs have been signed. They have listed out these MOUs, no need for us to know. Right. This 2023 also marks the 10th year of the first gift city, because in 2013 only we established this. Okay, so 2013 it was out, 2014 we established it. Okay, so this marks the first decade. And how we are going to do the next decade, how to improve IFSC and how to make India the global financial hub. For all these debates, IFSC will be the fulcrum of it. Insurance companies, apart from protecting, so the biggest benefit of insurance is that not only does it secure us against mortality, property and all, first of all, it encourages the savings habit. Insurance, it is not just to provide a safety net, it also changes the way in which we save. So here, this savings habit will also provide long-term funds for infrastructure. For example, the LIC, whatever you put into the LIC, where will it invest? It will invest in Adani? No. Okay. It will invest in companies, it will invest for long-term development purpose. It will give money to the government. That's how. So development will happen through insurance, and this segment is something that we cannot ignore. So some facts we'll just look at. US is the largest insurance market in the world. Right? The very premium that is collected by US itself is nearly equivalent to India's GDP. 2.8 trillion they have taken in 2021, but now we have reached more than 3.12 or 3.2 trillion. Okay. And insurance penetration has steadily increased. There are two words that you need to know. One is insurance penetration. The second is insurance density. What is insurance penetration? Insurance penetration should be seen in terms of GDP. How much premium you pay over GDP. Take all the premiums collected by insurance companies, divided by GDP. You will have a percentage, isn't it? How much it is? In India, it has now increased to 4.2%. In 2010, it was 2.7%. Slowly, it has increased, and the increase is mainly headed by life insurance. We do not have more importance to non-life insurance. So this is also a fact in India's. Second is insurance density. What is insurance density? This is in terms of GDP percentage. This is in terms of population. Right? The premium, how much premium we have paid towards the population. So population is in lakhs, premium is also in lakhs, and therefore when you divide it, you will have it in terms of rupee or dollar. So for global sake, we are having that US dollar 11.1 was the insurance density. Now it has increased up to $91. So slowly insurance penetration has also increased. Insurance density has also increased in India. This is a good sign. But certain things that we are different from other countries is the life insurance is higher than global average. And the problem is that rather than just accidental covers or other insurance, most of the life insurance are savings linked and not life risk based. You can see that people are subscribing to LIC policy. They will not know whether it's an endowment plan, whether it's a life plan. They will not know anything. The policy holder, the agent will come and say, you put like this, put 5 lakh, you will get 10 lakh. உள்ள போட்டதுக்கு அப்புறம் தெரியாது அவ்வளோ வராது. Okay. Yes, of course. All the insurance taken, the premiums taken. Government will give insurance, which means government will give the insurance through the premium will be paid to whom? The insurance companies. Government will pay on your part. Right. So non-life insurance was also showing a healthy sign this year, mainly because of health and motor insurance. Why? Health insurance increasing is a good sign, but motor insurance increasing is because of the act. Okay, Motor Vehicles Act amendment கொண்டு வந்து minimum என்ன பண்ணோம், at least a third party insurance should be there for 5 years. அப்படி amend பண்ணதுனால people are subscribing to it. Okay. But okay, so recent amendments, recent changes will also improve this scenario. This is a very important fact. Please note it down. India's today's position is 10th in terms of the insurance coverage. The Swiss Re company projects that India will become the 6th largest insurance market by 2032, especially driven by the digitization reforms taken by the government. Okay. And why it has increased in சொல்லிட்டு, as you see, சில schemes கொடுத்திருக்காங்க. Ayushman Bharat health scheme, Suraksha Bima Yojana, accidental death, Jeevan Jyoti life insurance scheme, Vaya Vandana old age scheme, Fasal Bima Yojana insurance schemes, and all. If you do not know all of these schemes, please take a note of this and look into the features of this. Okay, I hope all of you have some fair idea about this. Okay, so no need to know என்னென்ன நடந்திருக்கு, எத்தனை lakh, இந்த டேட்டாலாம் நம்மளுக்கு தேவையில்லை. Pension sector again. In pension sector also, the pension funds of the US is the largest in the world. US company is having the largest insurance market, it is having the largest financial market, it is having the largest pension market, and therefore it is the largest economy in the world. So pension assets have been increasing, and India also slowly increasing. India is giving two types of pension. One, pension by its own, as a welfare component is giving pension, and second is a subscription model. Subscription model, for example, the NPS. Like that, it is giving two types of model. Recently, pension has been slowly increasing in India because it has been given digitization through the ePPO, DigiLocker, some changes in the civil service rules and all, ex gratia and all of this. So this is the old age pension, widow pension, national social assistance. These are things that are continuing. But this will not give you pension like, let's say, I think நம்ம ஊர்ல கூட 1000 per widow, 1000 rupee per widow per every month. This is a kind of this national widow pension scheme. Like that, there are certain schemes. But pay as you go scheme, you will subscribe to some amount according to what you expect, and then you will be given returns. So under this, we have two important things. One is the NPS scheme, and second is the Atal Pension Yojana. This is meant for the formal segment. This is meant for the unorganized. Isn't it? So here you can find there is two important changes that you need to note. Earlier it was from 18 to 60. Now we have increased it to 18 to 70. 70 வயசுலாம் ஒருத்தர் பென்ஷன் போட்டானா போடாட்டி என்ன? In 70 years also you can subscribe to this national pension scheme. Okay. So 24% are female subscribers. But if you look at APY, you can find that 44. This you can say both as a negative as well as a positive also. One, you can find that much of the organized segment is concentrated by women. And second, you can also see that despite being organized, they have some sort of social security to rely on. Okay. And another trend is that those opting for 1,000 rupee, let's say after 60 years, you can withdraw 1,000 per month, 5,000 per month, 10,000 per month. Accordingly, you'll have to subscribe, isn't it? Those opting for 1,000 rupee earlier in 2015-16, it used to be 38%. Now it is. So most of them want how much? Minimal of 1,000. Whether it's a good trend or whether it is positive or negative, I do not know. Right. Whatever. This shows that people are having less to invest in NPS. அதான் காட்டுது அப்படிதானே? ஆனால் they will not be talking about this particular data. They'll only say that NPS, we have increased the female participation, like that. Okay. Now India needs to be a pension society. How will it be a pension society? Insurance will increase first, and also when insurance increases and India will become a high middle income country, financial literacy will also be increasing. And let's say future expansion in NPS is to be spearheaded from the private sector. Till now, the NPS is mainly due to the contribution of government, both central government and state government. Yes, for NPS, even overseas citizens, overseas in sense NRI are also eligible under it. Okay, so they can also subscribe this particular fund. So it says that next decade, the NPS subscription will increase because of the private jobs that are created. How far it will be true அப்படின்றதுக்கு நீங்க அனலைஸ் பண்றப்ப உங்களுக்கு மறந்துருக்கும் இப்படி சொன்னாங்கன்னு. Okay, right. So fifth chapter, prices and inflation. Shall we take a break? Okay.
எப்படின்னு ஒரு மணி நேரம் எடுத்தீங்க.
Right. So we'll start with this fifth chapter, which is about prices and inflation. This is a small chapter which will only give about the trends, certain things, which the trends which has departed from the earlier experience of inflation is what we are going to discuss. So as we know, inflation in the last year has been overall on the higher level, not only for the case of India, almost in all countries, and especially it has been severe in the case of advanced countries. So that trend you can see here, that in the advanced economies, the average which was around 0.3, 1.4 and all, it shot all the way up to 7.2. From 6 going up to 9 is not a big deal. But from 0.7 going all the way up to 7 is a big deal. Okay, so that's why they had a very hard time in terms of controlling inflation. So cost to push inflation is what was the biggest threat even after pandemic, mainly due to the supply chain disruption, the Russian angle and all. So yesterday we spoke about that, in how the Russian-Ukraine conflict is leading to an upsurge in commodity prices. Right. So stagflation was also increasing, due to which an increase in the interest rate was followed across the world. In India, what are the inflation trends? One, first of all, it says that India chose not to overstimulate, thinking that prices are manageable. And of course, the prices were manageable because we did not overstimulate. Prices are still manageable as of now, because only cost push inflation is high. The demand pull inflation is not so high. Even though there has been a demand upsurge, we have been able to control it compared to other advanced economies. So global slowdown, the interest rate increases, the commodity prices lightly have come down recently. Global economic slowdown and the interest rate increases, which have tightened the expansion of money and lowered global demand, is now leading up to a lower commodity prices. But despite the consumer price and the wholesale price moderating towards the fag end of this year, we can find that the core inflation in India has remained sticky at around 6 and above. So overall headline inflation remaining high, it could be due to various factors, especially food and fuel. But if we take away the food and fuel and only we look at the core, at least the core should be moderate and beyond 5, below 5. But it is also around this 5 margin, which is obviously posing a difficult challenge to India's monetary management. So there has been an uptick in the service inflation also. So last year, service inflation was very low because it was not fully opened up. Now services have come back to the pre-pandemic levels, and it's slowly starting an increase in both its cost as well as demand. So retail inflation was mainly driven by high food inflation in India. And also notes that inflation in the education sector, of course, the data talks about in what areas, what and all increased, what components, that and all is not needed for us. Okay, the main driver, if you see, food and fuel. The second, not fuel, at least food was there. Education subgroup also increased in the last 1 year. Comparative to the previous 2 years, education sees a very huge increase in this inflation, mainly because of the reopening of the physical classes. This could also be one of the cases. And once the supply is flush, once complete reopening has been done, this may come down. Food inflation is broad based. It is not only specific to onions and tomatoes. Across the food segments, we can see that the prices have increased. And that is visible especially in the main contributors like vegetables, cereals, milks, and everything. RBI recently even forecasted that the domestic prices for cereals and spices will, of course, increase further in the recent near times because of supply shortage. Milk products are also expected to increase because of the high feed stocks. Feed stocks of the poultry and for everything for milk domestic for cows and all have been increasing, due to which milk cost will further increase in the recent years. So these are some trends that we could observe. When it comes to certain commodities such as tomato also saw the highest inflation rates in the last year. Onion was the main driver of inflation among the vegetables, among the top vegetables in 2021. This year, the point of discussion has been around the prices of tomatoes. So tomatoes, if you could see, could be wildly fluctuating. The reason why tomato was increasing, tomato inflation was because of unseasonal rains and crop damages. Especially in Andhra, Karnataka, there was severe rainfall during the harvest period, and due to which the supply, the harvest of tomato dropped a little bit. Inflation in pulses also remained muted compared to the previous years. In 2020 and in 2019, pulses inflation was very high in India. Of course, the economic survey even dedicated an entire chapter for this, as to how pulses have increased. But this year, pulses have remained muted because of higher production. The highest production in recent years in pulses has been seen this year, due to which its prices have come down. Edible oil prices has been also been one of the main drivers of inflation, because India imports near to 60% of the edible oil in India. Right, we are, of course, one of the leading producers of edible oil, and we are also one of the largest importers of edible oil. So 60% we are import dependent, especially palm oil. Palm oil and sunflower oil is some commodity that we import. We didn't have so much of problems regarding to palm oil, but recently sunflower oil became a very crucial commodity which showed up, because sunflower oil is mainly exported from Ukraine. Okay, so 15% we are importing from Ukraine. That also has led to a spike in oil prices. So what are the measures that we took? For example, in cereals, we banned wheat exports. Recently, I think some 3-4 months ago, wheat exports were banned. Export duties on rice were put. Basmati rice and all, people, the Indian producers will be willing to export it rather than send it to the domestic supply, because export value is high. In order to cut down the competitiveness, India has been imposing export duty, so that they will not be exporting, rather put it in the domestic market itself. Second, pulses. Buffer stock has been maintained since 2020. As part of the National Food Security Act, the government has been procuring more and more pulses, and sometimes when the pulses is shortage, it has been releasing it from the FCA godown through the open market sales. Okay, so that it is stabilizing the supply of pulses. And also, in order to incentivize the import of pulses, zero import duty. No need to pay for agriculture cess if we import pulses. Tur dal and urad dal were put under the free category import, which means no conditions. You can import as much as you like. Right. So these are all some measures which we have taken in the last year in order to stabilize the prices of main cereals and pulses and all. For oils also, because we are import dependent, we had to reduce the basic duties, exemption of the cess. Soya meal was declared as an essential commodity, so that we might import it and use it as a feed material for bringing soy oil. Okay, so adukkaga we put this under the essential commodities. So these are some measures to stabilize the rates of essential commodities. So if you look at CPA, WPA, last year was a situation since the last 2 years, where there was so much of divergence between the CPI and the WPI. Last year, in fact, if you had remembered about the discussions of the economic survey, the chapter on this inflation had spoken specifically about the reasons why WPI and CPI is showing so much of divergence. ஏன் ரெண்டு வேற வேற மாதிரி இருக்கு? CPI is showing 6%, WPI is showing 13%. When CPI is showing 8%, WPI is showing minus percentage. Why these kind of divergences? What could be the reasons? And these reasons were given to us in the last year. It had even introduced something called as refined core inflation. These kind of concepts were introduced. This year, completely turning around, we are speaking about the divergences rather than divergences. We are speaking about the convergences of these two. So the last year's story was about the divergence of these two. This year onwards, we are able to see that these two rates have finally started to converge. So the divergence is narrowing, not only in terms of CPI, WPI, it has also been seen in the rural-urban inflation differential. Always rural inflation will be different, urban inflation will be different. Sometimes the differential will be so high. This time, since the last 1 year, there are divergences, but it's been relatively narrow. Okay, but compared to 2021, this year again, what has increased? Rural inflation is higher than urban inflation. Coming to WPI, WPI remained low, of course, we do know that due to COVID, it was very low. Then in May 2020, it reached all the way up to 16%. Again, by December, it has come down. Why WPI inflation is so much varying is because a part of this is due to imported inflation. Crude oil prices will have a direct impact on WPI and not on CPI, because whatever the changes in the crude oil prices will be compensated through the action of taxes. So when it reaches us, tax may sometimes reduce the burden of increasing crude oil. But whatever increase happens in the crude oil will directly impact WPI. And therefore, it is more sensitive to crude oil prices than CPI. Okay. And what are the secondary impact of global inflation? RBI, in one of its study, finds that 1% increase in inflation across the world, let's say global inflation has increased 1%, India's inflation is also increasing by 1%, and let's say crude oil prices will be the main driver, isn't it? Not only does it increase by 1%, secondary impacts will be seen. Fuel will drive up the prices of tomatoes and vegetables. Because vegetable prices are high, it will again lead up to hotel prices and other prices, food commodities and all. And finally, when it reaches us, rather than just 1% increase, it would have been increasing by a huge higher number. So it says that 63, if 1% increases across the world, and India 63 basis point will increase through second round effects. Second round immediately. Because of this, what happens? 1% will increase, then secondary impact. From fuel, it will come to food. From food, it will come to industries. From industry, it will come to services. This is called a secondary impact. Secondary impact will lead up to 63 basis point and spill over. All this is happening, and altogether inflation will occur, isn't it? That again will increase up to 46. Indirect and spillovers will be around 46 and 17%. Okay, so these are the secondary impacts. Again, turns secondary impact means the inflation, inducing inflation in other areas. Okay, this all will have an impact on inflation in India. So this is one of the threat. That is why whenever global inflation is occurring, India is also going to face a very difficult problem. So convergence of WPI and CPI. So this is the story of this last 1 year. The huge divergences between them have started to converge since the last year. Narrow, 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 and now they are traveling together. Okay, so why? Abdina, first, divergence was because of the global price happening, lagging effect seen in the WPI and CPI, all of this. But now things have recovered. and almost the effects have been seen both in the industry as well as the retail, and therefore it is showing signs of convergence. One, why this has lowered and why this has remains, while this is falling, this is not falling. That is why they are converging, isn't it? So you can find that the reason for this convergence could be inflation in crude oil, sorry, cooling of inflation in crude oil, iron, aluminum, cotton, etc., which are important commodities or the baskets in WPA. Therefore, it has been slowing down. But if you see here, services inflation has increased in the last year, and that will impact what? CPI, WPI. CPI will be impacted because services is not there in WPI at all. So service inflation has been leading up or at least sustaining the CPI levels, while the commodity prices that are slowing down, especially due to recession fears, are narrowing WPI and CPI. Housing price index. For the first time in many years, housing prices have started to increase. Two types of housing price index are released by the National Housing Bank. That is the assessment price. எவ்வளவு வரலாம் வேல்யூ அப்படின்னு சொல்றதும் market prices. Both of them have been seeing a, if you look at this, somewhat static, and since the last year you can see a slow increase. So housing prices are increasing. Why is this essential? Whenever it increases, it gives us vital information about private consumption. It gives us information about whether there's going to be an investment cycle, and all of that it will give us a sense of. So boom, whether we are going to boom, whether we are going to bust, all this information we can see through the housing price index, thanks to the 2008 crisis of USA. Because when we study the USA's bust of 2008, prior to that, there was a big boom in housing price indexes. Therefore, when it is heating up so much, we can anticipate there is going to be a bust. But this is not heated up too much, but it is showing healthy signs of recovery. When there is demand for housing prices, it will increase, isn't it? That's why. So it indicates a revival in the housing finance sector. Home loans have increased. And this is not a trend, not only specific to some areas, all the 8 metros of the country have witnessed an increase in housing price index. Now, as a conclusion part, 2022 global inflation, is it a rerun of the 1970s inflation? So right now we are speaking about the fears of stagflation. Inflation is high. There is no growth at all. All these are there. Whether we are going to go into a stagflation situation as was there in 1970s, these two periods are to be compared. The survey emphatically says that it is no. These two are quite different. The situation has become very, very different. First, why is it different and why is the current inflation manageable? First of all, in 1970s, the main driver of the inflation was oil prices. Oil prices were disproportionately high. For example, 400% increased in 1973. 4 மடங்கு increase ஆயிடுச்சு. We didn't have like that. And also oil price alone was increasing. It was the main driver. But here you can find that it is not just oil based, but it is broad based. When it is broad based, sometimes this inflation can also serve the purpose of inducement of production, isn't it? Just one segment increasing will lead to disruption. When all segments are showing a price increase, it can become the necessary impetus or incentive for production cycle to stimulate by its own. That is one of the reasons. Second, commodity supply disruptions have played a smaller role in recent price increases than in 1970s. Right? So completely disruption. Nearly there was no supply at all to America. That's what was happening. But here, of course, global supply chains have all disrupted, but it's not as severe as it was in 1970s, because even if, let's say, we are dependent on China, but even if China is failing, we can still maintain the supply. So global supply chains have become far, far efficient compared to 1970s. So this, again, the other important thing to note is this year's inflation follows years and years of low inflation compared to the 1970s. Prior to the crisis itself, the inflation was high. And therefore, when crisis struck, it became so unmanageable. But right now, years and years of low inflation gives us the necessary leeway to manage even if inflation shoots up. Okay, the financial monetary stability is weak. We didn't have, let's say, our inflation targeting started only from 2015, isn't it? MPFA போட்டு MPC ஒரு committee போட்டு the way in which we are managing inflation only started from 2015. So right now there have been many experiences that we have learned from, and therefore our management of financial systems are quite better than 1950s. So therefore the comparison between 2022 and 1970s is not a good comparison. It is not to be compared. Okay, and finally it says that the energy intensity of GDP, to increase the GDP by certain amount, how much energy consumption is needed அப்படின்றது தான் energy intensity. That energy intensity was very, very high in 1970s. For example, to increase the GDP levels of USA, they have to consume so much of energy. But right now, we have moved towards renewable sources. We have alternative sources. And therefore, the energy intensity has come down. Okay, so even if energy sources are disrupting, we can still clock a higher growth. So these are the reasons why 1970, it is not a replication of 1970s. Okay, so 2023 will show less macroeconomic volatility than last year. Both consumer index and WPI has shown below 6 when we are writing this particular thing, because in December both have come below 6. RBI projects that in the next quarter it will be around 5. Okay, so if we have a normal monsoon, we will be hovering around 5, 5.4. So that is a good trend, which means we can control. The downside risk, COVID-19 again re-emergence can happen, but luckily there is no such signs, isn't it? So China இருந்து வெளியே வந்து பரவுற மாதிரி தெரியல. That is not a health concern anymore. Elevated domestic supplies for cereals and spices in the near term. So cereals and spices doesn't seem to abate. The prices have not de-escalated. Therefore, that could be a milk prices, climate, delayed pass-through. Delayed pass-through means any kind of, let's say, lowering of prices will not be passed on to consumers, because when it was high, they didn't pass it. When the prices were high, because many businesses feared that they shouldn't pass the higher input cost to consumer, they were trying to keep the prices same. Okay, now the prices have come down. When the prices, input prices have come down, they should also decrease the price for the consumer. They will not do that. Why? Because earlier they were absorbing the kind of loss that they had, isn't it? And therefore pass through immediately, it will not pass or transmit. So that could be delayed. That is also a kind of a risk. Okay, so before going into the 6th chapter, we will go into right. We'll see this because tomorrow we have 3 chapters which we can do very quickly. That is agriculture, services, and industry. Mono sectors of the economy. Some important facts about it, we'll just run through it. Okay, so 3 chapters we have combined into one. Therefore, we'll quickly run over that. So now we'll just talk about external sector and then come to this social infrastructure. Okay, so external sector. Financial shock and health shock of the millennium had contrasting effect on the global economy. In this millennium, if you see, since 2000 onwards, 2008 crisis came, which was a great economic shock. Then 2020 came, which is a health shock. Both of this had contrasting effects on the economy. If we look at the financial shock, what ensured or what followed after that was, because it led to a slowdown in growth, we were facing the lowest interest rate regimes of the world. Almost every interest rate across the world came down. And slowly, because of this, what was picking up? Growth was picking up. But contrast it to what is happening right now. This also led to a contraction, but the contraction was not followed up by low interest rate, but rather it is immediately followed by a very high interest rate regime. So this is why we are speaking about all this kind of fluctuations and volatility. So as we discussed, all of you would be aware that this monetary tightening by the USA and all led to supply absorption of capital and all of this was happening. Okay, so global forecast growth will slow from 6%. Last year it was 6% global growth. Now it will be 3.2%, and again next year it will be 2.7. So 2.7%, the IMF has predicted this will be one of the weakest growth levels in recent years since 2001. Okay, so this is the context in which we are discussing about external sector. One, increasing openness of India. First of all, trade is not to be seen as an end in itself, but rather as a means to a balanced and sustainable development. Balanced, equitable, and sustainable development. So through trade, just trading itself is not going to do. Through trade, what is the financial position we have? What are we able to achieve? Let's say import is high, export is less. Should our approach be to increase the export at any cost? Should our approach be to increase the export at any cost? No. Your export should lead up to what? It should lead up to better forex reserve of the government for the India, sir. No, that should not be the argument. When your export is going to lead to more income for the farmers, more income for the MSMEs, and due to which there is going to be socio-economic development, then that trade is welcome. So trade by itself is not going to work wonders. It should be qualified. Right. So if you see, conventionally economics has said that through trade, we can achieve economic development. So trade openness is seen as a metric that countries should follow. And in that position, government, say India, has been performing well. You can see that with the global trade levels, India's trade as a percentage of GDP has also increased. It was hardly below 17% in the year 1999, both imports and exports. Yesterday also we were seeing the stats. How much exports we have today as a percentage of GDP? 19 இருந்தது இப்போ என்ன ஆயிடுச்சு 21, not 24, 21% வரைக்கும் ரீச் ஆயிடுச்சு. அதே மாதிரி நம்மளோட எக்ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ் இம்போர்ட்ஸ் வந்து 25க்கு மேல. இம்போர்ட்ஸ் has reached maximum 21%. In the year 2020, export reached beyond 23%. Import also reached like that. Nearly 50% we reached. Okay, but the approximate or the conservative number for this will be 46% is the proportion of India's trade with the world. Okay, so trade has been contributing. Yeah, so this is the number. The IMF puts that India's number is 45%. So this indicates what? Trade openness, isn't it? From being very autarkic and closed in our economic trade, now we have opened up. We have liberalized, and as a testament to that, we have the share of trade increasing. This is similar to, so you can see the number 12 to 15 in the 1880s, 16 to 25 in the 1990s, 25 to 50% in the 2000s onwards. So contrast this. Whenever we speak about, let's say you are required to write about export-led growth in India, what are the benefits of liberalization era? Then you have to put these numbers. Put the number that earlier in 1990s, trade contributed to only 17%. Now it contributes to nearly 46% of trade of India's economic position. Okay, that. So, but the one downside is that trade being very important component for us, this year trade will only grow by 1% by WTO estimate. Only 1% it will grow. Right, let's just look at the trade numbers. So here, whatever the basics that we have seen, we are going to back it up with facts. What we are going to see is external sector, we'll always use what? Balance of payment as a chart. So in balance of payment, what we will see? First, current account balance, capital account balance. In current account, you'll have to see trade. In merchandise trade, services. In capital account, you need to know what is FDA, what. So important data only we'll try to look at. So trade in merchandise. So look at these numbers. These are key facts that you can always try to know. Export. In terms of export, India's share is only an average of how much? 1.8% in terms of merchandise. Merchandise na visibles, commodities. Okay, goods. Goods trade only 1.8. In services, so the overall current account trade in India comes to around 2.2% of the world. This is very, very less looking at its potential. Import, if you see, 2.7%. Okay, so in rank, you can see merchandise imports, exports, India ranks 21st. In services exports, India ranks 7th. Don't ever think that India is number one in service exports. Just because it is having good surplus or balance, it doesn't mean that we are number one. We are number 7. Okay, so we are being the largest economy, 5th largest economy. All of this is true, but still there is so much to reach in terms of its export and import potential. Okay, so just make note of this number. And this year we have reached the record high of 400 billion exports in terms of merchandise. Merchandise means visibles, isn't it? Visible components in financial year 22, not talking about 23. 23 it has slowed down because exports have fallen. In the year 22, 422 billion, which even exceeds the $400 billion that we estimated as part of India's export policy. Foreign trade policy we have. Under the foreign trade policy, we envisage that we will grow at 2022, we will export 400 billion worth. That was our target. We in fact exceeded our target, $422 billion. Right. So this year, again, certain trends regarding trade. Import especially has increased. Exports has slowed down in the last year. 37% increase. 37% the share of petroleum has increased. Earlier it was 30% share. This year it is 37. Does not mean that we have consumed more. The value of the items we consume has increased. Okay, so crude oil prices have increased, due to which it is reflecting here. So merchandise, so we'll also be looking at the numbers of how much we have traded, what is the balance and all. So current account, so merchandise trade deficit, that is not current account, the trade visibles only. The visible trade, if you look at the numbers, first half, April to December, there's 8 months if you see. In 2022, it was 218 billion was the gap, as against, so there was a huge current account, merchandise gap, trade deficit நிறைய இருந்துச்சு அப்படின்னு சொல்லலாம். Coming to export destination, USA is the largest export destination of India. Second is UAE. And one important factor to note this year is Netherlands has replaced China as the third largest exporter of India. Sorry, export destination of India. We are exporting the most to one, USA, second UAE, and third is Netherlands, not China. Okay, since last year it was China. Now Netherlands have become a very important. இல்ல அது ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஹாஃப் இல்ல, இந்த ஏப்ரல் டு டிசம்பர். ஏப்ரல் டு டிசம்பர் itself is not a half, isn't it? It is 8 months இல்லையா? See, all this data is only tentative data because the survey itself comes in the month of February, January. So they will only have data until December. So with that, we can just estimate what is going to happen. That's all. See, diversification is also one of the reasons. Netherlands is also becoming a larger economy in its own region. And of course, the trade with China is also trying to protect itself, and they have been imposing import duties extra. And therefore, the demand from China, from India also has come down. That is also some of the reasons. Okay, I don't know exactly the reason why Netherlands is increased. I didn't have the time to follow it up as to what commodity we increase. But this is a fact that the only for this year Netherlands அப்படின்றது வந்திருக்கு. Because we'll never even remember about Netherlands ஓடலாம் நம்ம ட்ரேட் பண்றோமான்னு கூட தெரியாது, isn't it? So it's a third important destination for us. So look at this trend. So total exports, total imports in பார்க்குறப்ப one, you can find that the trade balance, merchandise trade balance, minus 9.8 was billion. So now, which was the balance which was low in 2020 has come down steeply. It has been decreasing. So merchandise balance has increased because of rising imports and plateauing exports. When it comes to services, you look at this number, you can know that in services always we export more and import less. So this is a gap. So in, let's say, in the last first half you have 156 and all. So overall in a year, $200 billion, $220 billion worth we export. We import around 120 $130 billion of imports. But when it comes to exports, merchandise is high or services is high? Which is high? Merchandise value is high or service export value is high? Which is high in India? Merchandise, obviously. Even though the deficit is there, does not mean that the value is high. Okay, balanced பார்க்குறப்ப அதிகம் இருக்கும். Right, so initiative to promote trade, just look at this. I'm not going to explain all of this. Foreign trade policy, FTP, which was till 2020, has now been extended to 2023. Signed a free trade agreement with UAE and Australia last year. Export preparedness index to incentivize states to exports. Agri exports have been given a push through agri export policy, and due to which it has reached the record levels of $40 billion. $40 billion is nearly 10% of the merchandise exports, isn't it? So that much we have reached. RODTEP schemes, export credit guarantee schemes, the trade infrastructure schemes, and all these are there. District as an export hub scheme. Under the one district, one product, district as an export hub. We are trying to become microscoping in our export competitiveness. We are going to establish districts as an export hub. So these are all. One, see, rather than just directly incentivizing indiscriminately, let's say if you are an exporter, I'm going to give you credit. Whether you are going to export, whether you are going to get value, whether you are going to be competitive, that is not a question here. The government will give subsidies in that manner. That subsidy is violative of WTO. RODTP, what it does is, you pay all the taxes. And once you have given out, exported certain things, once you face that the taxes burden has increased, you can come to me with the invoices. I will pay you back or remit the taxes that you have paid. This is not a violation because it is on the basis of the products. It does not discriminate, it is not indiscriminate, but qualified in nature, and therefore it is compliant under the WTO rules. Clear? Right. Now, international trading in rupee Vostro account was also in the news. Vostro account means Indian banks opening an account which will be settled in rupees, but it will be a branch for the foreign banks. So Russian bank will give the permission or will request Indian banks to open a Vostro account in their name, and all Indian traders will pay rupee will get rupee through that. Okay, so rupee as an international settlement is now slowly picking up. That has been a learning curve. So this will protect us from volatility. It will reduce the cost of doing business, improve the chances of Indian businesses to grow. And it also provides us the experience for longer term goal of promoting in rupee as international currency, internationalization of rupee அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. So if we are aiming for the internationalization of rupee, this is the first baby step we are taking. To put things into perspective, we who have traded, and today India's rupee is all there in the global market and all, we say, in terms of the forex holdings, if you see, the dominant way in which the globes are trading today, 88% of the trade happens in US dollars. 1.4% happens in Indian rupee. Right. But of course, it's hard to dethrone dollar. We cannot replace dollar. But if we are able to increase our percentage from 1.4 to 4%, that itself shows the internationalization of rupee. And therefore, these kind of steps will, of course, help us in the internationalization. Internationalization does not mean that we taking the position of dollar. We becoming a major supply in the global market. Okay, so this can, we have to increase it to 4%. The balance of payment, if you see, current account deficit record lows from 36 billion in the first quarter. Overall, it is more than 100 billion. So 9 billion in last year compared to this same quarter. From 9 billion deficit, now it is increased all the way up to 36 billion deficit in the second quarter of this year. So this is a very huge number. So this current account deficit, why is current account deficit high? Merchandise deficit is there. On the services, we have balance. Surplus is there. But taking all this together itself, we have a gap. That is called as current account deficit. So India is the largest remittance of the world. It is the largest remittance receiving country. The remittance this year has reached $100 billion. It's estimated to reach $100 billion. Okay, it's a very huge number. Out of, let's say 600 billion is the trade amount in current account deficit, in current account, out of which $100 billion comes from remittances. The way, why remittances have increased is because of the strengthening of dollars. Dollar is strengthening. That is why people from abroad are now sending money. Because I will send you dollar, you convert it into Indian rupee and be happy. Okay. நிறைய பொருள் வாங்கி சந்தோஷமா இரு அப்படின்னு சொல்லி they are sending. Okay. So that's also one of the reasons. So current account balance, if you see, India and other countries, of course, India has seen a little bit increase in the deficit, minus 3.5%. They've seen a deficit compared, but they are saying that compared to other countries, we have done better. But what are the countries they are comparing? See, Chile லாம் ஒரு country compare பண்றதுங்க. Chile, Colombia and all we are comparing and saying that we have done better. Whatever it is, it has been a very difficult position for us. So in terms of remittance, India is first, second is not China this year, Mexico, right? Then third is China. So usually second place will be China. This year, third place போயிட்டாங்க. Right, this is regarding current account. Capital account, important facts only I'm discussing. The FDI inflows were very high, $39 billion. Right, in this period, first half period, $39 billion compared to, so a little bit less FDI inflows. FPI inflows also, what has happened? Less. This year, the balance of payment has shown what? Surplus or negative? Negative. Usually, we will have a deficit in the current account. In the capital account, we will have surplus. This surplus will be enough to cover this deficit. But in the last year, at least since the provisional data it is available, it has not been the case. And therefore, there is so much of balance of payment being negative. Forex needs to be depleted. Only then it will be manageable, isn't it? That's why Forex have come down. So Forex reserve, which was covering And now it is 9.3. Earlier it was 11 months and 13 months was there in the last year. Now it has come all the way up to 9.3 months. Right, no need to go into the data. I understand that. I think you would know this, isn't it? So look at this. This is current account. This is capital account. So negative current account, positive capital account. Negative, positive. Higher it is, the more forex you will receive. Because the balance is positive, forex will be increasing. So since last year, it is all equalizing each other. In quarter 4 of 2022, completely negative. This year, if you see, look at the current account deficit widening, and the current capital account balance is very, very less. And that is why it was not able to cover, and due to which the forex reserve started to deplete from 635 billion. Now it is only around 563 billion. Okay, right. Now coming to the adequacy, whether this is adequate or not. Whenever we speak about the adequacy of forex, we speak about it in terms of its import cover, isn't it? So 9 months, whether it is adequate. 9 months of cover the RBI is having, whether it is adequate or not. Yes, because we have a global standard that 3 months and beyond is adequate. Beyond 3 months where we have, that is adequate. So the survey again points about what should we consider for the adequacy. Just import cover alone, is it enough? Import cover of 3 months I have, 8 months I have, 9 months I have. Is this alone the standard that we should be looking at? Apart from this, we should look at other areas also. For example, reserves against broad money of India. How much reserve we have? $560 billion we have, let's say. This can cover 9 months. This is the first thing, first rule. Second is 560 divided by M0 of India. How much is the ratio? That ratio also gives us the perspective of whether we will be able to manage it, whether the domestic supply of money is high or the external supply is high. All these kind of things will also give us a better idea about forex management. So apart from this factor alone, the survey is pointing out certain literature where it is advising us to look into other categories for knowing the adequacy of forex. Apart from just import cover, it asks us to look into the ratio of reserves versus broad money. And third, the reserves versus the external debt ratio. How much of the external debt we have regarding this. Okay, so this, because sometimes when we only look at this import cover, more forex, this can be sometimes inflationary, and there are certain economic articles which say that just by accumulating forex, it can sometimes lead to moral hazard. Exchange rate, if it is becoming very critical, then it will impact India's balance sheet. India's forex management is very, very difficult. Let's say we are all accumulating dollars. One point of time, dollar has gone down. Or let's say this supply of dollar or something has gone up or down. This will impact India's inflation also without our knowledge, isn't it? Without our doing also it can happen. All these are going to be risks. So kindly look into other parameters also rather than just looking at forex only in terms of import cover, right? Of course, let's say when there is so much of inflation in India, depreciation ஆச்சுனால என்னது inflation வரும் இல்லையா? So the depreciation ஆகாம இருக்கணும்ன்றதுக்காக தான், that's why they will let out or release the amount of money they have. Let's say in the appreciation time, or let's say there is so much of money flooding into India and we keep on absorbing. When we keep on absorbing, that also can lead to so much of money supply in India that can also lead to inflation. So there are various angles in which this forex management can affect India. Okay, so that's a word of caution. And exchange rates. Look at this particular phrase, argument, line of argument. The nominal exchange rate of the dollar was appreciating up to 7.8%, while the nominal exchange rate of India depreciated by 4.8%. In other words, it is not that INR has weakened, but it is the dollar that has strengthened. And no matter how many tweets are written against that observation, that is a fact. Okay. NEER in India, nominal exchange rate, is an index. Understand? It is an index which ranges from 100. If it increases from 100 to 105, this shows what? Rupee is strengthening nartham. Understand? That is what was asked in the previous year. When the NEER increases, what does it denote? Rupee is strengthening. When the nominal exchange rate increases from 100 to 105, what does it denote? Depreciation. So NEER is altogether a different concept. It's just an index here. So NEER has depreciated. You can find here. Okay, where is NEER? NEER வந்து 106 க்கு மேல இருந்துச்சு, அப்படியே குறையுது. From 106 it came to 104. Likewise, it is coming, which means that it is showing a sign of depreciation, isn't it? So NEER is depreciating. But if you look at the NEER of dollar against other economies, NEER is 4 basket and 40 basket, or 6 basket and 40 basket. 40 currencies oda cumulative perform பண்ணுவோம். How Indian rupee has performed against 40 currencies. Likewise, how dollar has performed against 27 countries, if you see, it has appreciated by 7%. So it is not that India alone is facing depreciation problems. Clear? Right. So external debt ratio, I think this is also one of the parameters that the survey asked us to observe. External debt as a ratio fell to 19.2% this year compared to 20%. There are estimates that say that as long as India's external debt means what India owes to other countries. For example, external commercial borrowings, India owes to other countries. Indian government taking loans from World Bank, that India owes to other countries, isn't it? So all of this foreign obligations, if you take that number, it should not exceed beyond 24%. As long as it is below that, it means that India is safe. Clear? So look at the cover. So India is having short-term debt of 19%, 20% as the total external debt. India is having 20% as the total external debt, out of which 97% of that cover is there as forex reserve by the RBI. And therefore, it ends with a positive note. And look at this. This is also has appeared in a question, isn't it? Out of the external debt, government is the largest holder of external debt. No question. 2 years in prelims it came. Look who is having the highest debt. Just look at this number, I think. September 21, 21 or 22. Look at this number, 127. Bank is having 155. Other sector is having 300. Within this other sectors, financial sectors or corporations, NBFCs and all will be having. Non-financial means companies. Companies, how much they are having? 250. So the highest belongs to corporates or through external commercial borrowings. So it is not the government which is having the highest debt exposure. It is the private which is having. That's why they asked this statement. Okay, right. We'll try to complete a chapter. Okay, just bear with me. Right. Social infrastructure and employment, a big tent. Statement. This is the chapter. So what does it speak of? Say, first of all, social infrastructure indirectly contributes to economic development by laying the foundations of our enhancement in income, employment opportunities, and all such. The concept of quality today, quality of life, what is the quality of life, has been enlarging since the last few years. So some years ago, poverty alone in its crude term was considered to be the quality of life that we can give. Today it is enlarged. There are many things that we need to provide. Today insurance is being spoken of as a very important social security measure. Likewise, what are all the social infrastructure that we have established? This and In fact, in this entire chapter, the highest weightage surprisingly has been given to this particular chapter. Every year, social infrastructure will be hardly devoted 20 pages or more. But this year, they have given 60 pages, 60, 70 pages in this particular chapter. Okay. அதனால நம்ம 60 பேஜ் பார்க்க போறது கிடையாது. We'll try to make it short. Okay. So, the need for social infrastructure, was of course felt when we were going through the pandemic. In all these years, there were talks about the government trying to detach itself from providing social welfare. But when the COVID came, the role of the government in providing social welfare and social infrastructure became a very important discussion. Okay, so here in 23, the question, 1 year, let's say in social infrastructure, we speak about health, we speak about education, we speak about rural education, rural economy and all of that. Whether the social infrastructure that we have developed till now, for example, in terms of education, whatever we have gained, whether it was lost after pandemic, whether it was resilient during pandemic, the question has been yes. Financial year 23 came and we are slowly seeing the benefits of the social infrastructure that we had set up. First, the social sector expenditure as a whole has increased. Look at the trends of the social expenditure. Here it combines both the center and the state. We can find that as a percentage of GDP, how much is spent on social services. In 2015, 6.6% GDP was spent on social welfare. Today, how much it is being spent? 8.3%. So slowly there has been an increase, out of which education has seen, education on the GDP percentage and total 2.9%. Health 2.1. What is the target? 2.5% at least should be the target. That is the National Health Policy 2017's target. In education, there has been many committees which have been saying that we have to increase our expenditure to how much minimum? 6%. It's of course a very high number, but at least immediately we should increase it to 4%. That is a number. But education over a period of time has remained stagnant. But what has improved? From 1.3, health expenditure has increased. It has not increased just only in the time of COVID-19, but also in the later stages also it has increased. Okay. And in terms of human development, we can find that in the last year, 90 countries fell during financial year 20. Human Development Index came down. India still ranks 132 in the last year's Human Development Report. It is ranking the medium Human Development Index. But still it is better than South Asia. South Asia la yaar irukka? It is better than South Asia. In Gender Inequality Index, India ranks 122, but still better than South Asia. Okay, so when you give this comparison, you will feel proud of India, isn't it? But whom are we comparing? Bata? Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Okay. So, multidimensional poverty index. India's recent multidimensional poverty index shows that in 2005-6, the percentage of people who were multidimensionally poor were 55%, far higher than the normal poverty index, isn't it? Normal poverty line, Tendulkar Committee poverty line, it shows that India's poverty is 22%. Far beyond that we had, isn't it? In 2015, 27%, 2004, 5 and 6, 55%. But right now, this is not an index that we are bringing by our own selves. This is a global report. It says that India has reduced its multidimensional poverty index by 16.4. What is a better way of comprehending poverty? Normal poverty line or a multidimensional poverty? Now the survey is asking you. Earlier, you used to say that you are saying that India has become lifted poor by saying that by not disclosing MPI and only saying about this poverty line. Right now, if you see, completely things have changed. In terms of multidimensional poverty, this is 6% lower than monetary poverty. If you look at monetary poverty, right, monetary poverty, you see $1.9, isn't it? Global poverty line, $1.9 is the World Bank's estimate. $1.9, how much people in India? It shows to be around 23% in India. Multidimensional poverty, how much it is? 16. What should be the number that you should use? Earlier, you were saying that whenever the government was disclosing MPI or not using some other thing, you said don't use monetary poverty. Now, the government, through the multidimensional poverty index, have proved that nearly 41 crore people have been lifted out of poverty in the last 10 years. That is the biggest dividend of economic growth. 41. So sometimes you need not even use what? Poverty lines and all. You can very well argue that even on the basis of multidimensional poverty index, India's poverty rates have declined. Nearly 41 crore have been lifted out of poverty as per the MPI, not in terms of Sachin Tendulkar committee. Okay. Second, aspirational district program, ADP, aspirational district program. I hope you know what this is. 117 districts will be taken and they will be given the objective of bringing on par with the best state, with the best district of their state. And next, they will be given the incentive to go beyond that. That is this has become a template for good governance. This is modeled on the basis of convergence, collaboration, competition. And in the recent few years, in the last 3 years, we have found that many aspirational districts have surpassed the state average in the health and nutrition component. So this shows that a healthy system of collaboration and competition will push even the backward districts to come out of poverty, to perform better in their socio-economic parameters. Financial inclusion also, ADs have outperformed other districts, it seems. So when you microscopically view, when you take a particular district as the goal, then you can definitely deliver. That is the biggest outcome of this aspirational district program. And that is why now we are focusing from districts to block. Aspirational blocks is now the second phase of this particular program. So this has become a template for good governance. For example, Mission Utkarsh program and aspirational blocks program of the government has been launched similar to these lines of aspirational districts. So today's social welfare or socio-economic indicators have been growing due to the performance of such schemes like aspirational districts program. Right.
Block development program, you would be explaining what it is.
Pardon?
Block program.
This block, see, nothing, rather than just taking districts as a unit and asking districts to perform, we will break down the districts into blocks. Criteria and the basis now. For example, they will take the best district of the state. They'll look at the literacy rate, they'll look at the health rates and all of that, and whatever is the least of that particular state, they will take it. That is why aspirational districts program like Tamil Nadu Virudhunagar was there. Then I think in the book Dharmapuri was there. So 2 were selected from Tamil Nadu. Likewise, aspirational districts are the most backward districts. They will be given the push to push themselves.
So they are not a pioneer for other districts.
No. They have to become aspirational. That's what. Aspirational districts program is not to choose the best. It is choosing the worst district. Understand? Choosing the worst district and pushing them to perform well in comparison to the best district. This kind of attitude, this kind of program has completely changed the way in which social welfare is delivered. That's why we are using it as a template. We can use it as a template for devising or designing other programs. Right. So e-Shram portal, isn't it? So this is for unorganized sector. This has become the database for migrant workers, construction workers and all. Recently, in order to improve the employability of these migrant workers, the National Career Service Portal and the ASIM portal, the employee employer matching portal, they have been integrated with this, so that employees, if they need anyone, they can immediately rope in. Okay, so employment can increase. 28.5 crore organized workers have been registered, right? Females are 52.8. Very, very important. Right, under the e-Shram portal, which is meant for migrant and construction workers, more than 52.8%. You can use it for your sociology, for social analysis, anything. You can say that unorganized nale yaar da irukonunga, female will be concentrated kuda ellalam. Or you can say that you can use it as a positive trend and argue even female participation or enrollment in e-Shram has increased. அப்படி எப்படினாலும் எழுதலாம். Right, so employment data from the PLFS and all, if you look at it. So yesterday also we saw that the PLFS data has shown that the unemployment rate, which was quite to 20%, has now shrunk all the way up to 5.6% வரைக்கும் குறைஞ்சிருச்சு அப்படின்னா. So unemployment rate has come down. Labor force participation rate slowly has improved over a period of time in comparison to April, June. For this, from this quarter, if you can see, slowly it has increased. Around 46-47% is the labor force participation rate. What is the difference between LFPR and worker population ratio? Labor force participation rate, those who are willing to work divided by employable population. That is called as labor force participation. Worker population ratio is nothing but all workers who have employment divided by population. Okay, that is why the difference between this will usually be the unemployment rate. Worker population ratio is around 45, which means out of the entire population, 45% only are working. But how many are willing? அப்படி நம்ம பார்த்தோம்னா எவ்வளோ அதுக்கு மேலே இருப்பாங்க இல்லையா, 47. The gap between them only will be translating into unemployment. Okay, so all these basics you will have to know. In terms of the composition of the employment statistics, what is the highest? Self-employment, isn't it? This year also, every year self-employment is the biggest contributor, and it has in fact increased over the year. But if you look at regular wage salary, it has decreased last year. Casual labor has also slightly decreased. Right. So the debate about casualization of work அப்படின்ற டிபேட்லாம் இனிமேல் என்ன ஆகுது? You cannot argue in India's context because it has been lowering. Self-employment has increased. So just look at some numbers. Rural plus urban. The total labor force participation rate for male has been 75%. For female, it is how much? 27.5%. Totally, how much it is? 51. Last year, it has been nearly 51%. Worker population is this. Unemployment is this. Okay, so there is a steep difference between male and female still continuing till now. This is current weekly status. This is on the basis of usual status. What is the difference between this usual status and current weekly status? Usually, when we find employment, we will use two important statistics. One is the usual status or principal status. The second is current weekly status. What does it mean? Correct. The period in which we are trying to find the employment. Let's say it is all based on the survey, isn't it? When I come to you asking this question, have you been employed in the last 1 year, at least for 100 days? And if you say yes, then you will be considered employed. That is called as usual status or principal status. Manrega also is considered as employment because that's giving you employment, isn't it? Right. Second, if I come to you and ask you, in the past week, have you been employed? That is called as current weekly status. So very recently, when it finds the employment, it is called as current weekly. Normally, we will not go with this, but let's say if at all there is short-term unemployment pressure, for that we will be using this. But the go-to number, India's will say that India's unemployment rate has come down by this. That is on the basis of this. India's unemployment rate is now in 2020 to 2021, both, how much it is on? 4.21. Number mariya irukku. Right. So whatever, that is the fact. We have to deal with this. Okay. So 41% is the LFPR. So usually, when we look at this and this, it seems higher. Which is higher? So a person, contrary to perception, this is different. Usually you will be saying that for 1 year a person will be employed, but for 1 week you will not be employed. Isn't it? So in the last 1 month, at least if you had been for 1 week, that will be considered as part of this. So here, in the 1 year, consistently only if you have work, that will be reported here. Here, if you had found a small marginal work in 1 week also, you will be considered as employed. That's why this number sometimes seems to be higher than this. Okay. So measurement issues in female labor force participation rate. One, always we say that labor force participation rate is very low for women. It is only 32.5% in this last year compared to males, which are more than 78%, and all is there. But the survey finds that there are issues in the way in which data is captured. For example, if you go and ask about employment, you'll take a question and ask where you, let's say, first problem is about clubbing all productive work with domestic duty. For example, have you taken water? If you are, let's say, fetching water for someone else, and if that person is paying you, fetching water, that will not be considered as work. That will be considered as domestic duty. Second, if you are going to the forest and if you are collecting firewood, that will be considered as domestic work. It will not be considered as work. So domestic work is considered to be those who are undertaking domestic work are not participating in the work. That is what, isn't it? So the questionnaire itself has a problem. In the PLFS survey, we have a data which only tries to capture so much of data aggregated together. They will ask you questions in such a way that you'll say yes or no. Whether you have done this, yes. Whether you have done this, yes. If you say yes to all of this, they will consider yourself to be part of domestic work and leave you outside of LFPR. So the nature of work itself, how we define work itself, needs to change. Isn't it? So much of the productive work is clubbed as unproductive. That is one of the biggest issues why female labor force participation is significantly low in India. That is one of the reasons. If we consider that, if we consider some other broad duties as part of work, then you can find that from 32, the labor force participation increases to 46%. Okay, so it is considering that we should change the way in which we capture data. Second, a single set of question for measuring the labor force. For example, even ILO is asking, sometimes when you ask questions, you ask a simple question and they say no, and you consider themselves unemployed. Rather than that, ask the same question in multiple ways. For example, they are saying whether the person is helped in the family business. Another question. Second question, whether the person worked in their own business. Sometimes when you ask, have you worked in your own family? You'll say no. Have you worked of your own will? If I ask, you'll say yes. Isn't it? So multiple questions of the same meaning should be asked. Only then you can capture data. There are so much of inconsistencies in which the labor force participation rate is captured. So this is the way in which we have to change. We need to measure work rather than employment. Okay. So self-help groups role. Quickly write. This could be, this is based on the principles of group solidarity and microfinance. The transformative potential of the self-help groups were exemplified through their role in COVID-19. For example, India is having 102 crore self-help groups, out of which 88 are completely all women self-help groups. So success stories include Kudumbashri programs, the Jivika self-help groups of Bihar, and all of this. So this bank linkage, self-help groups and bank linkage programs since 1995 has become the largest microfinance institution in the world. And also data very clearly says about the fiscal discipline or the financial discipline of this self-help groups, that 96% of the loans taken by the self-help groups have been repaid. Unlike industrial loans, where a huge chunk goes out, they have been very prompt in their repayment. Second, the impact is therefore empowered women and empowered hinterland. We cannot discount the role of SHGs, and that is why even in this year's budget, it says that one of the primary areas of focus should be to scale up the operation of SHGs, because they have so much linkage to the social infrastructure of India. Work under Manrega, yesterday we saw that work done on individual land has increased from 16% in financial year 15. Now it has increased all the way up to 73%, which is creating durable assets for the household. If a household has to build a tank, let's say water tank or something, they are doing it with the help of Manrega, which is lowering their cost burden, which is also providing them employment. So two advantages we are having. Okay, so rural wages has also increased, but if you take the rate of inflation, rural inflation, the real wages have been negative, it seems. So that is a concern in rural areas. Education, gross enrollment ratio has increased. Girls are outperforming boys in both primary and secondary. ரெண்டுலையுமே girls outperform பண்றாங்க. அது எப்போ வராது? Higher secondary and higher education girls will not outperform boys. So dropout rates in வரப்ப எதுல வருது? Girls are higher. Okay, so pupil teacher ratio in financial year 13, it was 34 children pupil teacher ratio. Now for one teacher 34 children, now it has decreased to 26. Okay, so these are all some things. I don't think you can remember all of this number. Just know that the gross enrollment ratio has increased. What are the programs? PM Shri, National Curriculum Framework, STARS program, Vidyanjali. What is Vidyanjali program? Vidyanjali program, do you know? An education program by the government. This is a way in which you can volunteer. The CSR can come, they can teach, they can provide education facilities and all. Regarding this, already a question has been asked way back in previous year question kuda irukku. Okay, so I'm just pointing it out so that you might note it and go and read. Okay, so higher education, 27% of the population is between 15 to 29. When you talk about demographic dividend, when you talk about youth empowerment, quote this data. Okay, so students enrollment has increased since the last few years in the higher education also. Skill also, if you see, all India skill development is very, very less in India. Out of the total population of the total workers, only 2.8% are skilled in formal or vocational. That was in 2019. In 2021, you can see that it has increased a little bit. From 2.8, it has increased to 4.1, isn't it? Youth. So that is skill development programs have been increasing because of all these schemes. Right, I'll send this slide also. Please kindly go to this. And this again speaks about the health parameters, all the measures that we have taken. Just go through this. Health also, you can see. So all of this, I'll leave it to you. Please go. And they see that, in fact, the doctor population ratio in India has exceeded what the WHO limits. WHO says that 1:1,000 it should be. How much we have? One doctor per 834 we have instead of 1,000. But do you know why? Because we are including whom abdina 13 lakh allopathy and 5 lakh Ayush. Okay, so combined, if we consider themselves also as part of the health force, then of course we are exceeding. Okay, and here you can see that the out of pocket expenditure of the total health expenditure, sorry, government when it was spending 28 rupee per percentage, 64% was spent by us. When government increases its expenditure, what decreases? Out of pocket expenditure decreases. That is also shown in this particular slide. So then deworming is a low cost, high return investments. This is not to speak about deworming. It gives us an idea about, rather than going for very high expenditures in terms of health, for example, rather than just building aims for 2000 crore, sometimes we can do small interventions which will have huge dividends and rewards. For example, deworming. We are even having a national deworming day. So look at deworming. Deworming, if we can cut down on this, it will have an impact on the stunting. It will have an impact on anemia, school absenteeism. And these are all the social parameters that we want to improve, isn't it? You can do it through a simple exercise called as deworming. So as a national exercise, if you observe the National Deworming Day and give a small tablet to all the children, malnourishment can be contained. Their absenteeism can be contained. So this kind of low investment, high return, low cost, high return investments like deworming should be duplicated in other areas. Okay, so till now, we'll just complete. I think we are exceeding. So tomorrow, just some slides are there. We'll try to complete. Okay.